of interactive technologies, digital for culture and education. So Rihanna, it's up to you, and the mute.
Thank you, Francesco. Can you hear me? Just let me know, because sometimes I have problems with this mic.
Perfectly.
Super, very glad. So hello, everyone, and warm greetings from Luxembourg, where for once it's not snowing, it's not super cold, and it's not raining. So really, I hope all of you, wherever you are, you're all well. And it's very nice to see many known faces and many known names. And for those I have not had the pleasure to meet yet, I'm Rehanna Schwinningeladek, and I'm the head of the unit in charge of interactive technologies, digital for culture and education, as Francesco said, in DG Connect at the European Commission. So the unit that supports the 4CH project. And many thanks to Franco, Roberto, Francesco, and their teams for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. So I'm going to make the most of it and share with you some important developments in terms of policy and policy funding that is going to guide us in the next years. Now, first of all, I would just ask if someone wouldn't mind sharing, Francesco, my slides, because if I have to do it, I get lost and I don't see people anymore. So it's so it just shows that the tools that we have right now are not always super. So if you can go to the next slide, and I'll tell you as we move on. So I will start with the recommendation on a common European data space, which was adopted on November 10th and announced by Commissioner Thierry Breton at the European conference that took place in November. So what is it about? And if you can go to the next slide. So the recommendation is our guiding policy framework for the next years, and it aims overall at helping cultural heritage institutions to seize the opportunities created by the digital transformation, to accelerate their digitization and digital preservation efforts and the digital access. As we know that only roughly, the numbers are not always very precise, that roughly 20% of collections in heritage institutions have been digitized, and maybe half of it is available online. And we have very few monuments and sites that have been digitized. So there's a lot to be done. And to this effect, the recommendation, which is a policy document, which is a recommendation to member states, it focuses on nurturing a common European data space for cultural heritage, where we have high quality data that flows between cultural heritage institutions, SMEs, startups, creators, but also with other sectors where the reuse can be of great value, such as education, such as tourism, or the wider cultural creative sector. And this would globally positively impact the society and the economic growth. So this is the overall objectives. Now, what are the main elements of the recommendation? So if you can go to the next slide, please. So this is non-exhaustive. Huh? It's just to give you a snapshot. So then you understand, and you can also make links with 4CH. So one of the important things here, and I'll start with the scope. So the scope of the recommendation is quite broad because we cover various types of digital, of cultural heritage, be it tangible, be it intangible, be it natural heritage. And we have seen sometimes that in some countries, you may have monuments or statues which are in caves, So sometimes the boundaries are not that clear what kind of heritage it is. And here we aim at being comprehensive. And of course, born digital heritage as well, because we want to be forward-looking. So that was an important aspect for us. And what we are recommending member states is to meet some targets that would really allow them to accelerate digitization, but especially to make sure that the heritage which is at risk get some priority. So it is important because we cannot digitize everything we need because we have limited funding, all of us. So there are some criteria that can help member states to see what needs to be digitized. And then we propose cultural heritage at risk. So I don't have to convince you, this community, how important the cultural heritage at risk is. So what we propose, what we recommend member states is that by 2030, we have all of the cultural heritage that they have defined at risk, that it is digitized in 3D. And we have an intermediate target, which is 40% by 2025. So this allows to have a progress and be able to see how fast, how steady the progress is. And obviously, with cultural heritage at risk, you also have the most visited sites. Of course, since the pandemic, it's a bit on hold, but the consequences, of the of hypertourism, of pollution, of regular deterioration of the most visited sites is there, and we have seen that. So we also recommend member states to digitize in 3D half of the most visited sites, and also with the 2025 intermediary targets. And we leave to member states again to define, what are these visited sites and how many that would be. And to achieve this, what we encourage is member states to set up digital strategies for cultural heritage, be it at national, regional, or regional level. And these strategies need to be comprehensive. So they really look at the whole sector, for all the different parts, not only digitization, not only preservation, but the whole, the process, the skills part, the access part. So really to have this comprehensive approach to the endeavor, to the sector, and that are forward-looking, that really take into account as well what advanced technologies can bring. Another important dimension here in the recommendation, it's the national and regional aggregators. And we encourage member states to provide a clear mandate for national or regional aggregators, because what we have seen is that in countries where there are aggregators and they have been empowered, it makes a difference. Aggregators can help to facilitate the process of digitization. They can help to build digital skills. They can help to engage cultural heritage institutions. So they are important intermediaries in the Indian endeavor. Involving more SMEs, we are, the SMEs, they are really they constitute an important element of the industrial fabric of the EU. 90% of the industrial fabric comes from SMEs, and they have huge skills. So there is a win-win where we have world-class SMEs in the EU that can help cultural heritage institutions and member states to attain these targets. We have excellent SMEs who provide all kinds of services, be it to digitize, to create content, to curate content, and they can be really valuable partners in this endeavor. The digital skills gap is also an important factor. Obviously, what we see is that at the EU level, we have an important skills gap, which is existing, and it also affects the sector, because if we want to make more and more use of technologies, we need to make sure that we will have the specialists to be able to do that. So in the recommendation, what we have recommended, we have suggested member states to do, it's to assess the digital skills gap in the sector, and really to come up with a plan. How are they going to tackle it? And that is quite fundamental if we want to make sure that we will be able to harness the power of technologies for the sector. Reinforcing Europeana's role within the data space is also an important element. So we have set some indicative targets in the data space, which aims at an additional 40 million high quality content to European and the data space by 2030. and 40% of this should be in 3D. So it's we really, up to now, we have 3D content, but it's not always of very good quality. So we really want to give a boost to the 3D content that member states will be developing and making it available through Europeana. So this is really, in a nutshell, the main elements of the recommendation. If you can please move to the next slide. Now, this policy ambition, it will materialize in the common European data space for cultural heritage as one of our flagship data space under the Digital Europe program. And I think I have already said a few times in different, maybe in different formations, that Digital Europe is going to be our main program for funding the deployment of technologies in different sectors, be it in the industrial sectors or in the societal sectors, and in areas of public interest like ours. So if you can go to the next slide. The Digital Europe program will support the deployment of mature projects that will foster the creation of a number of data spaces in strategic sectors that you see here. And these data spaces, they're an important element of the European data strategy for which the directorate in which I'm working is responsible. The overall aim is to make the EU a leader in a data-driven industry and society. It's about creating flows of data, free flows of data within the EU and across sectors for the benefit of public administrations, of public institutions, of researchers, of education, of a variety, of a number of sectors. So how do we put in place those mechanisms, those processes to make that happen? And of course, we all agree that the pandemics, it has highlighted the critical role of digital technologies, as Francesco, you said in the beginning, but also of data, and infrastructure, robust infrastructures in our lives to continue to collaborate, to work, to really keep our lives, running. So the development of this sectoral data spaces that you see in the slide here, and I'll speak about the cultural heritage one, which is of interest to you. I'll quickly mention media, and it is one which you don't see, which is tourism as well, which will be handled by my unit. But this is really for your information to know the different data spaces that we will be working on. So the development of common European data spaces in these sectors, they aim at contributing to accelerating the digital transformation in these fields and across, to create synergies. And of course, the ultimate goal is really to link these sectorial data spaces and have this synergy. So for that to happen, we will also have this middle layer that you see with an overarching data space support center to coordinate all data spaces and ensure common standards and interoperability. And then we will also have a number of tools which you see in the lower layer about providing be it edge and cloud services or middleware solutions, high performance computing capabilities, or AI on demand platform solutions. So this is the architecture that is going to be in the Digital Europe program, and from which our sector will benefit. So the idea is that if we have any progress which is done on HPC, on high performance computing capabilities, how can we help our institutions to make the most of it so that they can increase, their processing capabilities when they digitize. If you can go to the next slide. So if I dive in very quickly into the cultural heritage data space, so the cultural heritage data space, in a way, it has been a forerunner in making data more widely available. The community has been very active in this, and we now have a healthy community, a healthy ecosystem, and we want to further nurture it into a data space for cultural heritage. It will build on the current European platform, expand its functionality with more high quality content, with more 3D content, as we said. And this, we hope, will really foster wider reuse of the digitized cultural resources as cross-sector and cross-border. And we've been putting a strong focus on 3D over the past couple of years. And 3D is really the technology which is the most mature right now for the endeavor which is awaiting us. And this is why it is really important that cultural heritage institutions are empowered, that they acquire the skills, that they have the support to engage in 3D. And that is where your work is so important, because it will lay the foundations of a future competence center that will help cultural heritage institutions to engage in this important endeavor. And this also mean with more high quality content, services, that it will give more opportunities to the community also to make use of these services, but also to come in the data space and offer content and services. So the way the cultural heritage, the data space will function is by having European IT score and having important work done by projects such as 4CH, enriching the data space and making it grow. If we can move on to the next slide. Now, what is important here, which I should have mentioned, but so right now we are working on the calls. They will be open in the first, I don't have the exact dates in mind, but they are not open yet, the calls. So we will have a procurement which will be published and open sometime end of January, beginning of February, and a call for proposal, which is going to be open a bit later. So as soon as the calls are published, we will let you know, so you know what are the opportunities. Now, the data space for tourism, my intention is not to go into it, because that's not the purpose, but it's for you to make aware and let the people you know who might be interested in a data space for tourism, and that call is open. What we are funding right now, it's an exploratory work towards a data space for tourism. So it's a coordination and support action with a budget of 1 million, which is open right now. So if you know people who might be, interested by such a call, please spread the word, and I'll be happy to share my slides later on. So then you can easily forward if you want. And as you can see on the slide, the idea is also how do we enable the sector to share and make data more widely available. And the idea is also to create interconnections with the cultural heritage community, the mobility data space, which will also come in due time, and the media data spaces. And I'll ask you to go to the next slide. Here again, I won't dive into the details that you have on the slide, but it's to tell you that we will publish a call for data space for media a bit later in 22. And the idea is also, how do we empower the media industry, which is a subsector of cultural and creative industry, to make the most use of data and have data-based cooperation. And the idea is also here to create those links with other data spaces such as cultural heritage sector or tourism. So if you know people who might be interested, please spread the word, and we would be really pleased and very much open to go further into a much more detailed presentation. And this brings me to my conclusion, because I think I've exceeded by far my 10 minutes. Sorry for that. So what is, so if you can go to the last slide. Voila. So if I have to conclude here and leave you with some thoughts, I think there's one word for me which is absolutely crucial, and it's collaboration. collaboration is fundamental. The knowledge, the know-how, the expertise of this group in 4CH, together with the objectives of 4CH to create a competence center, makes it an important element of the data space on cultural heritage. If we need to build more digital skills in our sector, in the cultural heritage sector, you are the ones who have the skills. You are the ones to be able to empower others to acquire such skills. If we need, you have seen the emphasis we put on 3D. If we want more 3D content, you are the ones who know how to do it and who can show others what are the best practices, what are the tools to digitize in 3D. So that is really why it is fundamental that the 4CH project collaborates, the 4CH consortium, the 4CH group collaborates with member states who have to implement the target of the Commission to be able to understand the needs of member states. You have member state representatives in the group, which is super, and they can help to create those links. For example, many of you are affiliated to universities who could develop courses on 3D digitization and thus help to bridge the digital skills gap. Secondly, working closely with Europeana. That is absolutely key to advance, to have more 3D content in Europeana in view of the future data space. I mean, my vision is that in 5 years, we don't speak of a Europeana community on one side, a 4CH community on the side. We have together a cultural heritage data space community, where what is developed by one group can be deployed and taken up by the other, and you mutually reinforce each other. And that's why it is also important to go beyond the consortium partners and also to expand to more member states, because the more member states we will have, the higher take-up we will have at EU level. And of course, it's also important to have collaboration with Commission initiatives, the initiatives that we are developing, be it within my unit, for instance, with the consortium that developed the study, or the important initiative, important networks that are supported by the Commission, such as Europa Nostra. We really have there really win-win, collaboration in view of achieving this data space. And of course, the recommendation also mentions the important links and collaborating with UNESCO, and UNESCO is present in the advisory board. So there as well, we can share best practices and the ways that we do. So that's what I wanted to say in one word, collaboration. Thanks, many thanks for the excellent work that you are doing. And I think that the more we collaborate, the more this will enrich and the work that you are doing and its future take-up. So that was all on my side, Francesco, and the floor is back to you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you to you, Rihanna. I completely agree with you for a strength cooperation among projects in Europe, just to take advantage of all the aspects that we may represent. So thank you very much for what you have described, showing us very detailed the priorities, recommendation, and so on. Now, just a small comment, but this is since we have the time that we have is limited, quite limited, and since there are many presentations, I would ask you to write any question on the chat. We will try to respond if we have enough time at the end of the workshop, or otherwise we try to put something, the answers on the web page. Okay, so Paola, if you can start my presentation. So the 4CH project now is entering its second year and has begun the detailed design of the European Competence Center. And in parallel, we are also designing the network of the National Competence Center. The purpose of this workshop is just to initiate a process of synchronization and fine harmonization or fine tuning between what 4CH project has begun to do with respect to the themes of these 3 sessions of the workshop. So the European landscape, cooperation and international relations, and expectation of member states communities. And these 3 arguments just mentioned are closely interrelated. This workshop has also the fundamental purpose for 4CH to understand also what are the opinions of projects that are already operating in the cultural heritage sector in Europe. For example, Europeana, which has an impressive amount of digital collection, or other projects that operate in strategic sectors, for example, for defense or protection of the heritage itself. An example may be Copernicus, that through the European Task Force on Cultural Heritage produced a rich documentation, about identification of specific risk detection, for example, of underground archaeological sites, monitoring, for example, the evolution of national environments, the environment of cultural heritage sites. And all these without forgetting other projects that have been funded by Europe that have provided other rich and interesting contribution over the time. Just to say, Heracles, the heritage disease, the resilience against climate, or Protego for the European protection for cultural heritage, or Athena, and so on. But before going into the merits of the possible synergies, because I am really interested in the synergies with Europeana, with the other partners in Europe, I want to quickly recall the idea behind the 4CH project. Just few slides, but very quick. So also to better frame the context of the workshop. So next slide, Paola. Thanks. The idea is to establish a European Competence Center for the conservation of cultural heritage. Competence Center that is able to interconnect public and private institutions for the protection of the cultural heritage. A competence center that must be able to increase and enhance the digitization of cultural heritage, and this also in support of conservation. A competence center that is able to promote best practices and with the target community, which is in some way enormous, because the target community, as Ariana said, for us are cultural heritage bodies, both public, private, and these bodies are responsible for managing European monument building site, but also heritage agencies, also professional companies, and so on. And obviously, ministries and decision maker, okay? So therefore, a very wide and varied panorama. Next slide, Paola. In charge of the project, as you know, and this just to start a future discussion with other projects, are the guidelines for the operational part, for the legal aspects, and for the financial aspects. Next slide, Paola. The proposed structure for the competence center is shown in the figure, and therefore a structure composed of different layers to be more effective as a function of the scale level, and just to be in touch with all the parts. At present, we have started working on national levels. So we have also an advisory board whose aim are to foster and consolidate the sense of belonging to a common European cultural heritage, for example, through inclusive policies and so on. An advisory board that should also help the link with national and supranational organization, association that deals with the protection of cultural heritage. Next slide. So we move to the first point that for me is really important. These are the steps of the project, and now we can focus on the what is ongoing, and in particular we can give a look to the green arrow. The green arrow is on collection of tools and services. Next slide, Paola. 4CH is working on a catalog of services that can be applied to services that, when applied to digital twins, can perform completely different but equally important functions. And these are two examples. So from one end, this data set can be used, for example, for this is an example, by restoration center, for conservation, for prevention, or in case of dramatic event also, and you can think to an earthquake, also for reconstruction, okay? And we need the 3D, but we need the complete set of data. On the other hand, the same integrated data sets can be used for the other type of purposes, such as education, training, upskilling, gamification, and so on. So it's really wide, this field. Next slide, Paola. Since cultural heritage, this slide is synergies, but this is why, because since cultural heritage represents at the same time an incredible mix of tangible and intangible information. Intangible, for example, tradition, other history, and so on. I think that it's quite easy to find synergies, for example, between 4CH and Europeana. Obviously, it must work on this aspect. At the same time, if we think to active risk control and prevention, I believe that it could be natural a collaboration with Copernicus, and it could be extremely important also for the future, also for the prevention. In this case, I'm think about, but this is my opinion, if the synergies with Copernicus should be done at national level rather than at European, but not because I trust Europe, I believe in Europe and everything, but sometimes we have in some country already specific national projects going on. And probably this is a question for Nico for his presentation. Next slide. Okay, these activities, more than activities, these are various aspects that the 4CH project must take into account. And if you see, there are really a lot of aspects because, yes, we are born for 3D, okay? So digitization, obviously not only because we have also to include other data, scientific data, but not only scientific data, everything, the services that can help to maintain and to, in some way, show to the citizen how our past, our cultural heritage is important, is strong, and can be accessible for. So next slide. Now I want to make a specific case, and probably this is linked also to the last slide of Brianna's presentation, the Cultural Heritage Cloud. At present, we are working, we have two groups working on the platform of 4CH. A platform as the architecture, and the platform has integration of existing and available tools, or just to not decide, but to write the guidelines for the new services. At the same time, we are trying to understand what will be the best procedure to access the services of the Competence Center. And this means, obviously, that even if in ideal world, we would like to guarantee everyone access, it does not mean that this can happen in the real world and above all right away. Obviously, in the future, we expect and we want, if possible, to share everything in Europe of the data that we may have. For the reason, at the same time, we are investigating various federated access solution, just to provide different type of privileges. Obviously, if we count the Cultural Heritage Cloud, again, we have in Europe, we have HIOSC, okay? So we are trying to understand at national level what we can do for the future, but we have in our mind that the Heritage Cloud is really important for us, for all data types that we can share on it. So next slide. Okay, this is about session 3. Session 3, what we have done, we have started a survey on countries just to understand what we can do for national nodes. It's a pilot, and we have asked to try to understand how it could be at present the sustainability of national center, how can be the involvement of cultural heritage bodies, how are the networking capabilities inside the countries, how can be the network granularity, since we have just said that we want to operate also at regional level and also lower level, and just have an idea of possible infrastructure, digital infrastructure that can be used. So next slide, and I think that time at the end. I thank you all very much. This is a short presentation because I'm really interested in what will happen in the next presentation, because they are really interested in creating, establishing connection with other projects, having feedback from at national level and so on. So thank you very much. I, from one side, mute myself. From the other side, I invite Igon for the next talk, and who is about the work program.
Hi, and hello everybody. Thanks, Francesco, very much for your presentation and your introduction. First of all, it's a slight change on the program because my name is Igona Revilla and I'm working from in Tecnalia. And the person who was due to give the presentation is Isabel Rodriguez Maribona, which is the head of programs in our unit in Tecnalia, and she's also the innovation manager for the 4CH. Unfortunately, she cannot be with us today, so I'll do my best to explain the presentation. I'm going to share my screen. Let me know if you can see. Yeah. So. Thank you very much. First of all, we are going to start with what will 4CH do? What are the main deliveries and the main services of the Competence Center? The main services can be grouped into three different categories. The first one will be basically dealing with counseling and orienting the digitalization by releasing standards and guidelines. That will be done by analyzing experience, skills, and best practices that are currently being done or have been done previously, and research implemented in the European Union. We will also be done by mapping risks that can damage cultural heritage, and also identifying the best technologies that can either help avoiding the damages or help to prevent and repair the damage. Also creating and promoting interdisciplinary networks and mapping user needs, and releasing standards and guidelines for digitalizing CH and managing preservation and conservation activities. The other main group of services will be directly linked to one of the recommendations that Rihanna mentioned before, assessing the skill gaps, which is actually something that has been identified. And those services will be dealing with training on new technologies, capacity buildings, and upscaling. That will be done by creating an up-to-date set of training materials, different modalities, and also sharing best practices and promoting the use of standards and guidelines and tools. And finally, the third block of services will be dealing with supporting innovation and projects and offering innovative services and tools. And it will also be very much linked into the importance of involving SMEs, as Damian mentioned before. It will be supporting innovation regarding the data to be used by SMEs in education, entertainment, or cultural tourism sectors. It will be done by promoting innovative services and data tools, especially for 3D digitalization, facilitating access or trying to facilitate information on access to finance and sharing knowledge about the European funds and also national and regional funds and projects and initiatives for innovation, and also working directly with the European Commission on paving the way and identifying more research. So once we've seen what the CH will do, we'll focus on who will be the main target for the 4CH. And the first approach we've identified will be mainly to, first of all, are stakeholders and heritage professionals and managers, such as cultural heritage institutions that are responsible for managing monuments, sites, and buildings, and preserving them from damage and making them more accessible for public knowledge and enjoyment. Also, cultural heritage professionals that provide services for preservation, conservation, and restoration. And also other professionals that will be dealing with heritage-based contents, such as additional services, such as hospitality, tourism, creative industry, designing apps and games, etc. But also we will be directing our services to investors and donors that will be benefiting for increased social and economic value of cultural heritage. So actually 4CH will be in that center marketplace, linking offer and demand. And then how will be those services be defined? We mentioned the first approach, but the initial research we are doing, it's being based on a very comprehensive identification on user needs. We have been working on managing existing user needs and requirements identified by scientific literature, scientific articles, and also from European projects already in place. But not only that, we're also having a top-down and bottom-up approach to identify your user needs. So together with all this in-depth literature review, we are also designing a specific service and dialogues with practitioners and site managers to get that bottom-up approach to identify the user needs. And this initial research will help us to identify, first of all, the main user of digital cultural heritage, together with the expertise and the motivation they might have, but also identifying the user's profile and their role in preservation, conservation, and promotion of monuments and sites. And for that, we are using a value proposition canvas model methodology to identify them. And also, we will evaluate the potential of digital technologies in mitigating risk and challenges that cultural heritage is facing, and also identifying opportunities and barriers and possible limitations to these users. And well, all this we mentioned with briefly, very briefly, we mentioned what, who, and how we'll be doing, and that just to get like a specific focus on the innovation, what will be at the center of all this activity the 4CH will do? Well, at the center will be the innovation. And for the definition of innovation, we consider the innovation is creativity plus successful commercialization. It's really the plus where the secret is embracing the change to create value. So we understand that innovation is any new and systemic solution that solves a need, an identified need, but also creates returns to make it financially and environmentally sustainable. So how will that innovation be fostered by 4CH? Well, that will be specifically putting the focus on that plus that links the creativity and the successful commercialization. It will link all the research and the knowledge and the services that we will identify, but it will be a successful commercialization to national and regional heritage agencies, cultural heritage institutions, professional SMEs, and citizens. So 4CH will foster innovation in all activities to ensure that the Competence Center builds a well-researched portfolio of new products and services that provide a high added value for all the stakeholders involved in cultural heritage preservation in Europe. And very briefly, because I know we are running out of time and we're just at the start of the afternoon, so I don't want to take too much time. Briefly, I will mention the impacts of fostering this innovation, which are mainly 4 impacts. It will have impacts on the cultural impacts for professionals dealing in cultural heritage, but also it will have cultural and social impacts for citizens, and technical impacts for practitioners and companies, and in general, socioeconomic impacts for the whole society, because it will support cultural tourism, and tourism, we will link with the tourism and other sectors that are linked with cultural heritage. It will help to create new business opportunities and also jobs, thanks to improved accessibility to cultural heritage data and repositories. It will facilitate and reinforce the role of emerging creative industries that are using and can use any more value from the data and promoting the Federation of Creative Industries. And then it will promote socioeconomic regeneration of historic cities through better understanding and prediction of decay effects and more accurate and preventive maintenance versus only intervention. So that is very briefly the approach that we wanted to give you today. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Egon. Thank you very much. And now the floor to Henry, Brevet for Europeana, building a common data space for cultural heritage.
Yes, thank you, Francesco.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, good. And hi, everyone. Good to see all of you at the tail end of another long year. So let me share a few slides with you. There we go. Francesco, you see the slides? Good. Great.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to talk a bit about the development of what I call a mental model for cooperation. Just to, if I take a couple of steps back, I think that we can established that since probably 2018, a lot of things have happened in our world. The stakes have risen. Remember the European Year of Cultural Heritage in 2018, and I think since we've seen digital cultural heritage become a much more important part of the European agenda. I think that's really great. The picture you see in the background, I think, is familiar to all of us. I think on that day, on what is it, the 19th of April, 2019, all of a sudden, not only monuments and sites and the importance of preservation, but also the relevance of 3D digitization all of a sudden became mainstream, if you want, not only in our sector, but also in the world at large. And since, I think, we've seen the European Commission develop a number of really interesting and important initiatives that can really boost our efforts to make digital cultural heritage play a relevant role in society in the future. So all the more important, I think, to have a more precise view on how a cooperation could look like. I think all of us in this room, many of people in this room at least, I think have been working in projects in the past decades in the European sphere. And I think you'll agree with me that the more you can be specific in the design from the start of a new project like 4CH, the more we can be successful in developing strong corporations that really have a long-term future and sustainability. So I want to share with you a couple of mental models I've recently developed. These are by no means the end designs. These are really meant to provoke a bit of a discussion between us on how these things should relate with each other. So let me see if I can get back here. Yeah. So we've heard from Rihanna about the ambitions around Europe's digital decade, Europe's data strategy, two really important underpinning strategies to develop a digital single market for Europe, where autonomy of data is an important factor. The key element of the Digital Europe program are these data spaces. We have 14 at the moment from very different sectors. The closer ones to us would be perhaps media and tourism, but I think equally interesting will be how do we relate to data spaces like agriculture, given the sustainability and green ambitions that we have. The work program 2021-2023 already gives some pretty clear indications of where the data space for cultural heritage will be driven towards, and I think the recommendations that Rihanna already explained quite elaboratively will give a lot of impetus from the member states to boost up their activities in digitization and 3D digitization in particular. I think the assumption is that a lot of these member states will also be able to benefit from, for example, the recovery and resilience funds. We know that at least 12 of the 27 member states have made cultural heritage and digital cultural heritage part of their plans to use the recovery funds. So I think there is a lot of possibilities and a lot of options to make this common data space for cultural heritage work. Now, how could this work for us in practice, and what are already the key components? Now, it has been said that the Europeana initiative would be at the core of this data space. We've also established that it's really important to acknowledge and use the national, regional, and domain aggregators that we've set up over the past 10, 15 years. And I will come back to that because I think it might be an interesting starting point for thinking about integration of 4CH work into the Europeana networks. So what do we see here? We see that a number of components that a data space in the European Commission's vision should have already in place, or at least partially. There's a governance structure where the European Commission, the member states, and the community have place. We've got an infrastructure to get data from source to central places and beyond via APIs. We've invested a lot in developing standards for legal frameworks, also data frameworks, but all of those, I think, are in need of being adapted to the needs of the coming 10 years, where 3D will become such an important factor. So a number of things already in place, and a number of things will need to be adapted, but a central infrastructure is already in place, and I think we should make use of that. What else do we need? Well, I think we will need to together make the whole place, the whole data space, more sustainable. We know by now that there's a recent view that digital transformation also has a fairly significant digital footprint or carbon footprint. And I think it's important that we also connect to initiatives like the new European Bauhaus and so forth to make sure that this is really a sustainable place. So it needs to be more sustainable. It also needs to be more inclusive. I think putting people at the center of this data space is going to be critical. We can't think of this data space as a technocratic environment where data flows around without seeing people at the middle of it. And I think we've already heard that for 4CH, the user-centric approach is important. I think putting communities in the center of what we do is really the critical factor, because that's where the collaboration takes place, and also the peer-to-peer expertise can be shared widely. It also, and I think this is for me a very important point, I think we need to make this space very reciprocal. We cannot develop a narrative around this data space where the cultural heritage sector needs to go through a digital transformation to support SMEs in their developments only. There needs to be a loop, a round-tripping effect where communities, the institutions, and SMEs, creative industries, and so forth, all benefit from being part of this space. So there needs to be a quid and a pro quo in the system baked in. And for 4CH, I think that is also critically important to build in that reciprocal loop. All right, we also, what else do we know about the program? Well, we know that these are the three priorities for the Europeana initiative, improving the data quality. It's about building infrastructure and reaching audiences, and it's about building capacity. And we know that even while the program hasn't been published yet, we know a few things about the shifts in emphasis. And one of the most important ones is the 3D emphasis. So we know that by 2030, the Commission would like to see 16 million 3D objects being part of Europeana and the data space. Now, that is an immense addition. That is really, really significant. And that will not happen unless capacity is being developed. And I think 4CH is a critical partner in that. I want to stop one moment for something that, to talk about something that I don't quite understand sufficiently, which really is, why do we need 3D so much? And I haven't resolved that for myself, and perhaps we can have a conversation about that. I think a lot of arguments why 3D digitization of monuments and sites in the area of preservation are important, that's beyond doubt. I also think that 3D digitization, not only of monuments and sites, but of 3D objects in the cultural heritage sphere, have an application in, for example, gaming industry and so forth. But probably even more interesting is the fact that we are very likely moving to a 3D platform for digitization. So instead of just having the web that we reach out through our phones, it's not only social, but it will become 3D. So everything that the world will be walking around in will be augmented, machine readable, and so forth. So to me, that is an interesting thing to keep on thinking. about when we talk about 3D? Is it about the 3D objects, or is it about the 3D world that we want to contribute to? And why is that so important? Because in that 3D world, not only 3D objects have a relevant place, but 2D equally. We have done a couple of projects recently where we've shown how technology can help us transform 2D objects into a 3D world. I think that's something that also 4CH can help in building some competence around and technologies. So that is really about sort of a future world. And I think the more we can get clarity between us about that vision, the easier it will be to cooperate between projects. So if we imagine a 3D world, an augmented world in the coming decade, then our role could be to develop that 4D environment for it so that we can also move around in space and go back in time and perhaps even make some extrapolations into the future. Here's, of course, a project like Time Machine has already developed quite a strong vision, and I think we could also partner with that organization. So where does that leave us in terms of our mental model for cooperation? So if we again imagine the data space to have certain components already in place, and we know that there are a few questions lingering in the air, like how do we advance 3D into Europeana? Do we need to build national repositories? How do we support and enrich the data space with 4CH? And that we know collaboration is key. One of the things that we need to investigate is, where does the competence center, or perhaps these are competence centers, fit in and tie in to the already existing infrastructure. So here's, I think, an opening for a discussion. Like I said, we already have with Europeana a fairly strong network of accredited aggregators in all of the member states that could perhaps provide already a starting point for building extra expertise in the sphere of 3D through the 4CH project. So, Francesco, this is what I had to share today. I'm going to stop the sharing and hand over the mic virtually back to you.
Thank you very much, Henry. I think that we have a lot of topics to discuss together. Just to, I think that we really have a large field of collaboration, and just also to understand how to better combine what we can do for 3D and for all this part of data, we can see HB and so on, okay? And the connection with you, because I think that you have already a really impressive amount of data that can be, for sure, I don't want to say part, but necessary to 4CH and for the construction of the history of the 3D digital twins. Okay, so I think this I completely. So now, but this is a seed for the future, because I think that we should be in touch as soon as possible, just to see.
Yeah, maybe I can just make one comment. The data, yes, that's available. I think the infrastructure, and I mean the human infrastructure that we have in place, I think is important to take into account now in the design phase of 4CH.
That's for sure.
I really encourage also to talk to the Europeana Aggregators Forum. I know Marie Leroy is in this room. I think that's where we can find the cooperation.
Okay, now I stop and the floor to Nick Bonora for the European Cultural Heritage User Requirements in the frame of Copernicus Cultural Heritage Task Force.
Thank you very much, Francesco, and thanks for inviting me to present this activity made at European level. I'm going to share the screen. Do you have it? Wait a moment that I will.
Yes.
Is it in full screen?
Yes.
Okay. So let me see. So what I'm going to present today is the user requirement coordination in the frame of the Earth observation domain, and indeed Copernicus. The task force has been constituted in 2019, and it was mainly composed by national user representatives, differently expert in remote sensing and or cultural heritage. The task force job was built on top of a commission report that has been made by PwC to facilitate cultural heritage community for accessing the Copernicus product. The study presents some pros and cons, as all the studies, of course. It was consulted a large audience of users, but when the users are a lot, of course, the needs sometimes are very generic and didn't lead toward a unique dimensional requirement. That requirement that has to be digested by the Copernicus ecosystem in order to guarantee a certain level of user uptake. And also the task force has the objective to consolidate that user needs and also to validate the best option. I mean, with an architectural view within Copernicus to permit the best access for cultural heritage users to Copernicus products. And the three hypotheses was to keep the current system or provide users with an interface to collect the different Copernicus service data and information, and or create a new core service dedicated to cultural heritage users. So synthetically, what European user community needs: Uber chain monitoring and analysis, land change, desertion and abusiveness, anthropic and natural dynamic monitoring around the site, land change, geohazard, floods and subsidence monitoring. Also the touristic pressure within a site, historical building monitoring, vegetation change, also including infesting vegetation, coastline variation, because many sites are located on the coast, buried infrastructure identification, also anomaly behavior, and clandestine illegal excavation, microclimate change. Very important at this point, the microclimate change, because it impacts on the material of the heritage sites. Air quality monitoring for darkening, microclimate condition, and has stressed so far the monitoring and twins. There is a limit on what Copernicus can do for these needs, because I remind that Copernicus is a program that has been conceived for monitoring the environment and also to face security and emergency aspects. So, to consolidate the user needs, we prepared a matrix that was circulated by the task force members to the national experts. The outcomes was a filtering activity and a subsequent aggregation and analysis of the needs. And at the end, we were able to aggregate 75 user needs. We ask, in particular, to the national expert, what is the main user needs? What is the resolution that the users is willing to approach in order to better monitoring his interests? And then how does it weight from 0 to 5 the specific needs. This information were translated into a dimensional requirement in terms of revisit time, update frequency, and geometric solution, and shared with the Copernicus and trusted entities to receive their feedback in relation to the degree of satisfaction of the defined requirements and to identify the potential extent of the Copernicus product uptake. The Copernicus and trusted entities, for those that are not familiar with Copernicus, are the entities responsible for the development of the Copernicus services that I remind there are land monitoring, air quality monitoring, climate monitoring, marine environment monitoring, emergency and security. Plus, we have the space component and the in situ component. All these services and components as an entrusted entity responsible for the development of the specific service or component. So at the end, we identify 41 unique requirements, and the entrusted entities really strongly support us, not only on validating the information that we provide in terms of uptake. Yes, we can satisfy the requirement, or we cannot, but also providing further elements in order to improve the requirement, maybe telling us that we can push a bit more about, for example, spatial resolution or revisit time. The requirements were subsequently grouped into 9 macro domains that are detection of underground archaeological sites, non-destructive analysis of underground underwater positioning of cultural heritage sites, non-destructive analysis of the surface position of cultural heritage feature, then mapping the cultural landscape on the site and identifying the risk it is exposed to, then monitoring the evolution of both the natural environment of the natural site of the cultural heritage sites and observation change in the built structure, because it is important also to monitor the buildings and drawing a conclusion to facilitate an emergency intervention and enable public access to the sites. As we can see, the monitoring, the evaluation of the natural and the cultural heritage site is, I will say, the most wanted user from the user, the macro grouping of what has been asked from users. Here we see the same requirements, but distributed per Copernicus service. As we see, the most targeted services are the land monitoring services. And I have also to notice here, because it is not present, that the space component get requirement from the research community, that they are not asking for services, but they are asking for imagery. I mean, also beyond the Sentinel-1 provided by Copernicus, but also targeting the contributing mission in Copernicus, that are the mission that are provided by member states for different Copernicus purposes, and then to test new application, and then to provide the users that are responsible for cultural heritage monitoring and conservation for new techniques for their responsibilities, to apply for their responsibilities. So this is a Sankey diagram that show what Copernicus products can do for cultural heritage monitoring. Here you find what can be satisfied by Copernicus, not all the requirements we identified, not all the needs that has been expressed by users, but just what Copernicus can do nowadays with existing products. There are many. They are not all, but they are many. So this slide shows what we wish. So what Copernicus also replying, one of the 3 points that I remind, doing nothing, leave the Copernicus as it is in order to make a Copernicus user to access the different service, or creating an interface, or creating a new Copernicus service. We don't need a new Copernicus service, and to leave things as they are is not helpful for cultural heritage users. So what we really need is an interface, a thematic hub, where the different data sets that can satisfy the identified requirement can be grouped in a single interface, that provide information rather than data. Alongside the digital skills, it is important to provide users, I'm not speaking about now the research community that's pretty skilled, but even vertical skills. I'm speaking about those people that has to manage different assets related to cultural heritage. So it is important to provide to those people that has to manage sites information, not data set, because data set has different standard, not easy to manage, not easy to deal with, not easy to understand sometimes. But an aggregation of data to provide an information is quite helpful. I need, if speaking about the ground motion, I don't need the data, I don't need the model. I need a map with the velocity of movement of the ground that help me to identify critical areas to be monitored in depth. So going to the guidelines, so some efforts are still required to customize the current Copernicus product on the basis of the identified requirement. And a unique service access point, as just show, would be of benefit to permit users to exploit a single infrastructure. And also, ready-to-use integrated information related to land cover, land use, geohazard, climate, and also atmospheric parameters, and also meteo parameters that are not common in Copernicus, will allow to better understand the specific phenomena affecting the site. And also, okay, that's point I've already said about research, so I will able to, then let's skip it. Then the main conclusion of the task force was that a European Cultural Heritage Advisory Board composed of experts from all the member states should be established to advise Copernicus, the user forum, about the cultural heritage user need. It is very important. Now this activity has been stopped, and then we were not able to propose to the Commission this important point that could be also cross-sectoral in between the different European DGs. In order to address an important program as Copernicus, in order to match what cultural heritage user wants. Also, the Copernicus Academy, it is important also to support the new generation with specific academic course. The Copernicus Academy exists to contaminate academic course in different specific areas, and cultural heritage should be one of these areas. So also, it is very important, and then we have, I really stressed in points because there is an high potential for Copernicus to simulate substantial growth in the downstream market, the sustainable exploitation of cultural heritage. It is not only a public matter. It is possible to make business around cultural heritage, and there are different member states that are already proven. So it is important that the creation of a cultural heritage thematic hub, as shown before, as an infrastructure, as a place where different places, private and institutional, can meet together in order to define and develop new services based on the collected, even common, in particular, common user requirement. I say common because the Commission can offer everything to everybody. Northern Europe has different requirement than Southern Europe. We have differently made. So we have to define the common requirement and then put together in the same basket and then to make available to all the European community and beyond. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Nico. So now we have only 5 minutes delay, and we can stop for 10 minutes and resume the meeting at 3:30, okay, in 10 minutes.
Franco, are you here? Are you hearing me? I can, yeah, yes. May you switch on your microphone?
Yes, we can hear you very well, Mission.
Okay, just it was very interesting what I have been just described around Copernicus, and I think that we have this plan to join this information through what we are doing with Espadon, you know, especially to make the link between macro scale to localized information that we can get in the same way. And I agree with your comment about the fact that it's much more dedicated for the station 3 and 4. But it's clearly something that we have to work on. And at C2MF, there is Anne Bourges that is much more dedicated to the question of climate change, and things about, you know, preservation of monuments and so on. But it's not only about monuments, it's as well for objects. And I think that is one of the main issue. And we have to merge that and to think, especially for the next course, at the European level, to have something relevant anyway. Yeah. So it's very something to consider. I think.
Yeah, this was in the plans since the beginning, but this is the first time we are able to make this idea. Well, to make concrete plans on the idea. So that's right. We will start from actually the 4 presentations in session 3 will be just a starting point. Then we need to, I think, to parallel the project activity with very strong connections with the countries and the community from the countries.
Yeah.
So we can, well, you know, we can also serve as contact point for others like Copernicus.
Yeah, I think it's important.
It's actually in our mission, I believe.
Okay.
Okay, so we have 5 minutes left, maybe a cup of coffee, and we'll be nice. By the way, France made a very good work with the
we try to
you are working very well.
Having good discussion, so I think that we can manage in order to have something.
Yes, but I'm very happy with how things are proceeding. Congratulations to you and to Beatrice. She's still here, but you're very good work. Okay, see you in 5 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, Roberto, we can resume the meeting. So the floor to you for session 2.
Okay, thank you, Francesco. So let's start. Okay, I think that we are already connected again. So I can start, I think. Okay, the second session of the work focuses on how the Competence Center will cooperate and relate at a different level with international institutes operating in the field of cultural heritage. So now I would like to introduce, and I take this opportunity to thank them again, the three guests in this session who represent three prestigious international institutions. We will have Sanne de Koning, Director of Monumentenwacht, the Netherlands, Joti Osagrahar, I hope that my pronunciation is okay. She's the Deputy Director of UNESCO, and Erminia Shakitano, she's the coordinator of Italian Scientific Committee on Risk Preparedness of ICOMOS. So the relationships between the Competence Center and the institution operating in the field of cultural heritage is one of the most important issues that 4CH is working on, designing and defining the architecture and working on the roles of the center. As the conceptual map shows, we have already seen this map before in the Francesco presentation, the relationships between the governing bodies, the central and local units, the advisory board, and any other external institutions must be managed in at different levels, at international level, national, regional, and local level. These relationships must be based on criteria, rules, and procedures that take into account the different roles and the specific competences of the different institutions. And as Rihanna said, collaboration is the key. There is, among others, one aspect concerning the relationships that must be taken into account. Culture, as you know, is one of those areas for which the European Union has what the treaties call supporting competences. I mean that you can only support, coordinate, or complement the action of member countries. It has no power to pass laws and may not interfere with member countries' ability to do so. Within this picture, the Competence Center's main action will be to federate institutions working in the field of the cultural heritage and working for the cooperation, the collaboration, and the interchanges between the institutions at all the levels, from the international to the local. So one of the main actions of the Competence Center will be the creation of networks between international, national, regional, and local cultural institutions. Knowledge, experience, and best practices will be shared within the networks. This will all allow the Competence Center to provide the cultural institution with advice, support, and services focused on the preservation of monuments and historical sites. So 4CH aims at defining criteria, procedures, and modalities on which the relationships between the Competence Center and the networks of institutions operating at various levels in the field of cultural heritage will be based. To this end, many of these institutions are represented in the advisory board, a group of experts and scientists from all major national and international CH institutions, such as ministries, national clusters, governmental institutions, heritage agency, CH laboratories, and so on. One of the fundamental activities of 4CH will be to promote initiatives such as today's for an ongoing discussion with representatives of this institution. Today's insight will be into the collaboration and relationships between the Competence Center and three major international cultural institutions. a big number of institutions operating in the cultural heritage. We will have Sanne de Koning that will speak about Monumentenwacht, a European institution to which refers a network of Monumentenwacht-based, so-called Monumentenwacht-based institutions. Then Joti Ozagrahar will give us an overview on how and in which fields a very important worldwide CH institution such as UNESCO could collaborate with Competence Center. And Arminia Shakitano will speak about the relationship between the national structures of the Competence Center and the branches that some supranational institutions such as ICOMOS have in the various countries. So I give the floor for the first speech to Sanne.
Thank you.
Okay, I leave my sharing of my screen. And that's, here we are. Okay, Sanne, please.
Okay, thank you, Roberto, for introducing me. I will try to share my slides as well. Let's see if it works. Do you see it full screen now?
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sanne de Koning, and I am Director of Monumentenwacht Noord-Brabant in the Netherlands. It is with great pleasure that I tell you a bit more about who we are and what we do and how we can contribute to the development of the Competence Center for Heritage in the 4CH project. See if I get the next one. Okay. Monumentenwacht Noord-Brabant is based in the province of North Brabant in the south of our country. In our province, there are approximately 12,000 listed and protected monuments. 6,000 protected by the state and 6,000 are protected by the municipalities. We are a historic building watchdog whose aim is to prevent the deterioration of historic buildings by advising the owners on how to keep their property in good condition. Our mission since 1975 is taking care of monuments. That's what drives us, so that we can pass on our irreplaceable heritage to future generations. Churches, monasteries, forts, farms, mills, estates, but also archaeology, historical interiors and landscapes. They form the DNA of our province and are a source of inspiration. We are convinced of the power of heritage. Monuments make the area more beautiful, original, and attractive. Heritage gives quality to society, and that should be cherished. We prevent the decay of monuments in the province of North Brabant by carrying out detailed inspections of the construction. We also make minor repairs, give expert and impartial advice for owners and governments, and knowledge dissemination. Our reports act as a maintenance plan with priorities. We do this with the most important and ultimate goal that all our built and archaeological monuments are optimally maintained by preventive maintenance. The creation of Monumentenwacht has its origin in the 70s of the last century. Within the ranks of the then National Monument Conservation Agency, the first thing that was seen was the need to change the prevailing policy of repetitive restorations of the same monuments to a more sustainable and holistic form of monument conservation. The philosophy behind it was as simple as it was effective. After restoration, make sure that the monument remains technically in good condition and the next restoration may not be prevented in perpetuity, but can still be postponed for at least decades. On the one hand, this idea was motivated by the fact that the available budget for restorations, certainly at that time, did not cover the need for it by a long shot. On the other hand, there was also a more philosophical motivated reason. Every large-scale restoration reduces the historic value of the monument. Here you can see some of my colleagues who carry out an inspection. Not only the building is viewed, also the historic interior is discussed. Those who know the past understand the present better. Our living environment was shaped by all the people who lived and stayed in North Brabant. Monumentenwacht North Brabant makes an essential contribution to strengthening heritage in our province. We do this by promoting timely and high quality maintenance of our monuments. In this, we are, and that's crucial, independent and impartial. Here are a number of examples how small defects can lead to major consequential damage. In practice, this means that we visit our members every year to inspect their monument and then give extensive advice on the maintenance of their property. It is important to emphasize that we are a non-profit organization with no commercial purposes. We receive a subsidy from the provincial government. As a result, our hourly rate is low. Because of that, the threshold for our services for monument owners is low. That is an important factor for our success. We inspect more than 1,800 monuments a year in our province alone. There are 10 Monumentenwacht organizations active in the Netherlands. Our slogan is, "We look where no one comes." We are all members of the National Association Monumentenwacht NL. There we exchange knowledge and work together on our common goals, ambitions and challenges. The association promotes the work and protects the independent and unique status of the Monumentenwacht. Monumentenwacht NL also maintains contact with partners in the world of monuments, such as national organizations that are committed to the preservation of cultural history. We are the connecting factor between the policy of the national government and the implementation of that policy at the local level. I have been a board member of Monumentenwacht NL since 2018. In this picture, you can see one of my colleagues inspecting a slate roof. Here you can also see how important attention to working conditions and safety is in our work. Here you can see 3 of our main goals for the future that we have decided for on national level. The Monumentenwacht method creates also labor for architects, engineers and constructors. It is important to create awareness. The cultural heritage sector has to be attractive for young people. Also to stimulate them to work in restoration and maintain craftsmanship. Then the sustainability and the reduced energy consumption. Our national climate agreement has resulted in a heritage sectoral roadmap. Together with all national partners in this roadmap, we are looking for opportunities to guide monument owners in making their property more sustainable. We do this by seeking the optimal balance between taking measures and preserving the monumental values. For that purpose, we developed a digital advising tool. With this tool, we map out the wishes of the owner and the possibilities of the monument. Our employees are now trained to be able to give professional advice regarding sustainability. As far as I am concerned, this is an example of an approach that we would like to share in a European context, for example, in the Competence Center. In 2003, Monumentenwacht received the prestigious Europa Nostra Award. The award has been awarded for the complete Monumentenwacht concept and the important contribution that the organization makes to the preservation of cultural heritage. Internationally, the Netherlands is playing a pioneering role. For us, this award was not only a great token of appreciation, but more so an incentive to continue the professional implementation of conservation policy. In a number of European countries, the Monumentenwacht concept has been successfully adopted. We call them Monumentenwacht-based organizations. The 4CH project offers us the opportunity to breathe new life into the network of all Monumentenwacht-based organizations. Connecting and strengthening this network can form a basis of the Competence Center to link national governments and their policies to the operational field and the monument owners themselves. That is what I am committed to in the coming years. I thank you for your attention and wish us all a great project. Stay healthy and already happy holidays to you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sanne. I totally agree about the importance of the basic maintenance. Sometimes the preservation and the conservation depends on the basic maintenance to be done before, and the basic maintenance is cheaper than the very expensive restoration. So,
exactly.
So what has to be done? And this is something that the best practices and the technologies and tools to do that will be part of the exchange and sharing of competences and the knowledge, because I think that an approach, a maintenance, planned maintenance approach to the cultural heritage is very, very important for avoiding and for reducing some risks.
Yeah, we're now investigating also doing the inspections with drones and 3D modeling, but the 3D modeling is quite expensive for particular monument owners. So that's something maybe we can look into in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Sanne. So now the floor, Joti, the floor is yours. I don't see you on the screen, but I presume you are connected. Okay, I see you, Joti. Good morning, good afternoon. Please, the floor is yours. You have to unmute your microphone, Joti. Okay, fine.
Hello.
Hello.
Thank you very much, first of all, for this invitation to join this advisory group and to present. We're very pleased to be able to see how best to connect these 4CH centers and how we can bring all of the work that we are doing and bring that information, the technical expertise, to the 4CH centers and build their competencies to be able to work very closely also with UNESCO and with the World Heritage Center for the World Heritage sites in addition to other heritage properties. And the congratulations for the work that you have undertaken towards the establishment of these centers. I'm going to connect now to my presentation. I hope you can see the screen. Let me begin by speaking a little bit about some of the work that we have been doing with the EU in collaboration with the EU, so that you can, and some of it are things that we are doing at UNESCO that are in resonance with and align with the work that is happening with the EU or at the EU, but some of the others are actual collaborations. So I'm going to talk about both of those things a little bit. First of all, I think it's not moving forward. First of all, I think it's important to just mention what we mean when we talk about culture at UNESCO, because it is the work of the entire sector is quite vast. We're looking at 6 major culture conventions and 3 recommendations. So we're looking at built and natural heritage, which is the World Heritage Convention. The diversity of cultural expressions, which is the 2005 convention. Then we're looking at illicit trafficking, which is the 1970 convention, as well as the Intangible Heritage Convention, which is the 2003 convention, and the Convention for the Protection of Heritage in Armed Conflict, as well as the Convention for the Protection of Underwater Heritage. And in addition to this, we have the recommendation on the status of the artist, the recommendation on museums, and finally the recommendation, the historic urban landscape recommendation. In addition, so when we're looking at the work of the culture sector, we're really looking at culture in these operational terms across all of these different conventions and recommendations. Now, furthermore, UNESCO as an organization is committed to supporting member states in the implementation of the 2030 agenda and the new urban agenda, as well as now more recently a full commitment to supporting member states in climate action. So over the last decade, UNESCO's advocacy for a culture-based approach to development has resulted in several UN General Assembly resolutions that acknowledge the role of culture as an enabler and a driver of sustainable development. And this process has culminated in the integration of culture in the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development that was adopted in 2015 by the 193 countries of the UN General Assembly. Now, in these, in the SDGs, culture is explicitly referenced in SDG 11, 11 target 4 or 11.4, to strengthen efforts to protect and safeguard the world's cultural and natural heritage. But beyond target 11.4, culture contributes to development both as a sector of activity and transversely across other sectors. The contribution of culture to sustainable development is also clearly recognized in other major international frameworks, including the New Urban Agenda and the recommendation on the historic urban landscape. So with this in mind, UNESCO's with the idea that culture has a transformative power in enabling sustainable development, the thematic indicators for culture in the 2030 Agenda were developed. This is an initiative that is an innovative effort to establish a methodology for demonstrating culture's role and contribution to the implementation of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And these Culture 2030 indicators that were developed over 2 years, 2.5 years, are now in pilot implementation with the support of the EU, as well as other EU countries such as Spain and Sweden. And the purpose of these indicators is to measure and monitor the progress of culture's enabling contribution to the national and local implementation of the goals and targets of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. I want to also mention that in addition to looking at the sustainable development in this respect, to talk about the periodic reporting, which happens at the World Heritage for each of the conventions. But in this case, I want to focus a little bit on the World Heritage Convention as we are looking at these competency framework for heritage. Following the second cycle of periodic reporting, which happens every 6 years, World Heritage in Europe today highlights the current realities of World Heritage sites in Europe and proposes recommendations for the improvement of these of the management of heritage and inspires innovative approaches. So I'm just pointing out resources now which could be very useful to bring to these competency centers, and I think this provides a very important resource. And now we are currently starting the next cycle of periodic reporting for Europe. We have already just completed the third cycle of periodic reporting for Asia and the Arabs, and for the Arab States region and Africa. Asia is ongoing, and we will be starting Europe very shortly. So with that in mind, but it will take still a little bit of time to complete it. And then a similar analysis will be available in a couple of years after the completion of this periodic reporting. So at least for the next couple of years, I would say that this publication is the most important. This publication is the most important one for looking at World Heritage issues. The other resource that I might point out is the World Heritage Policy Compendium, which is composed of a number of different sources. It includes conventions, policy documents, operational guidelines, and a General Assembly and World Heritage Committee decisions, and of course, case law analysis. And this is a very important tool because it means it has a searchability possibility, which means that the number of different elements that we have can be brought together in this. We're looking now at safeguarding living heritage as in Europe as a way to build more resilient communities, and this is, with regard to the addressing challenges related to migration in a meaningful way, improving quality and the relevance of education, and empowering young people, strengthening intergenerational dialogue, and promoting conflict resolution. So there's a real effort to integrate living heritage into education for young people. Cultural and natural heritage is increasingly at risk from disasters, and within UNESCO, attempts to integrate a concern for culture in disaster risk reduction led to the adoption by the World Heritage Committee in 2007 of a strategy for reducing risks at World Heritage properties. In addition, in 2013, a specific chapter on culture was integrated in the interagency post-disaster needs assessment, a government-led process supported by the UN system in operation with the World Bank and the EU. More recently, in November 2017, the 39th session of the General Conference of UNESCO adopted an addendum to the strategy for the reinforcement of UNESCO's action for the protection of culture and the promotion of cultural pluralism in the event of armed conflict concerning disasters resulting from natural and human-induced hazards, which is aligned in the 4 priorities of the UN Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction 2015 to 2030. And this is the framework, the CURE framework that was developed with the World Bank for reconstruction and recovery. And I also have here the Warsaw Recommendation on Recovery and Reconstruction of Cultural Heritage that was also adopted by the World Heritage Committee. World Heritage Policy on Climate Change, as you know, is an important document that is now being updated. Climate change is now among the top threats to cultural and natural heritage sites inscribed on UNESCO's World Heritage List. Climate change disrupts the lives of communities across the globe, threatening entire ways of life, including the practice and transmission of living heritage. It also contributes to lost economic opportunities in the cultural and creative industries and cultural tourism. A comprehensive institutional framework has been developed within the World Heritage Convention to address the risks caused by climate change to World Heritage property. The key policy document is the policy document on the impacts of climate change on World Heritage, first adopted in 2007 and currently being updated. Cultural heritage does not end at monuments and collection of objects. It also includes traditions or living expressions inherited from our ancestors and passed on to our descendants, such as oral traditions, performing arts, social practices, rituals, festival events, knowledge and practices concerning nature and the universe, or the knowledge and skills to protect traditional crafts. While fragile, intangible cultural heritage is an important factor in maintaining cultural diversity in the face of growing globalization, an understanding of the intangible cultural heritage of different communities helps with intercultural dialogue and encourages mutual respect for other ways of life. Oh, sorry, I think I just lost my presentation, but let me see. So I want to speak now about sorry, I'm just trying to bring it up. If you just give me a second. Yes. So I want to take a second now to talk a little bit about the 2011 recommendation on the historic urban landscape, because this aligns also with the EU urban agenda and the new urban agenda and cities, as well as with sustainable development, sustainable urban development, as well as with climate change. So many of the current activities, such as the new European Bauhaus and many of these and the European Green Deal have a relevance and alignment with the UNESCO, the HUL recommendation. The 2011 UNESCO recommendation on the historic urban landscape, or the HUL recommendation, calls on member states to integrate conservation and management of cultural heritage in cities and settlements with policies and practices for sustainable urban development, and applies to all historic cities, not only World Heritage sites. It advocates a landscape approach for identifying and conserving and managing historic areas within their broader context, considering their interrelationship between the physical forms, natural features, and social and cultural values. This innovative standard-setting instrument advocates for the integration of heritage conservation with urban development plans and processes in order to manage change, to protect the heritage values, the outstanding universal value, or the OUV, in the case of World Heritage properties. The HUL recommendation recognizes the importance of aligning with and furthering the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the New Urban Agenda, the African Union Agenda 2063, and the World Heritage General Assembly that adopted the World Heritage Sustainable Development Policy of UNESCO. And the HUL recommendation also aligns, incidentally, with the Baukultur, the Davos Declaration. So there are many alignments with in this respect. In this year, the 2021 is the 10th anniversary of the HUL recommendation. So the celebration for the 10th anniversary of the HUL recommendation was an occasion for the launch of the UNESCO HUL call for action, inviting cities worldwide to raise awareness about the recommendation and accelerate inclusive urban heritage management through the HUL recommendation approach. Mayors and city leaders from all regions of the world gathered in 2 panels to share experiences and perspectives on the application of HUL in their cities, followed by a session of insights provided by high-level experts. So we want to take this opportunity also to invite all of you to consider signing up for the UNESCO HUL call for action, which essentially promotes 3 main actions. One is to sensitize, raise awareness of local and national actors about the HUL approach and implementation. The second is to promote local consultation processes to empower stakeholders and public and private stakeholders to support an HUL-driven approach to urban development. And the third is to develop local heritage management actions based on the HUL approach. Just to leave you now with on this point of the HUL with a few complementary initiatives and reference materials. The UNESCO Urban Notebooks is a monthly e-newsletter from the World Heritage Center on conservation and management of urban heritage that includes innovative practices in support of integrating heritage conservation with sustainable urban development, and is sent out in English, French, and Spanish. The World Heritage City Lab are innovative global and collaborative workshops to support the co-creation of strategies and solutions for the challenges of managing urban world heritage, and is based on practical case studies. And so this is, of course, something that we would invite the competency centers to join. The World Heritage Cities program is one of the 6 thematic programs formally approved and monitored by the World Heritage Committee, and today has 318 World Heritage properties on it. With the site managers of the World Heritage Cities, we create region by region dialogues for exchange and to share information. And finally, is the World Heritage Canopy, which is a case study platform for World Heritage solutions for sustainable futures, heritage-based solutions for sustainable development, essentially, that showcases innovative strategies and practices that integrate heritage conservation with sustainable development. Through case studies and practical examples, the platform aims to inspire and guide local actions that contribute to and align with the major global commitments, including the World Heritage Convention and the HUL recommendation, as well as the 2030 agenda. The case studies are along 6 main dimensions on environment and resilience, livelihood and prosperity, knowledge and skills, inclusion and participation, gender equality, and peace and security. The Urban Heritage Climate Observatory is a collaborative effort of UNESCO with the Group on Earth Observation, or GEO, Secretariat and the GEO Greek office with the World Heritage Center, and is an activity that applies Earth observation tools to understand and document the impact of climate change on World Heritage cities. The aim of the initiative is to place World Heritage properties in cities at the heart of local and national policies and actions, for sustainable urban development and climate change by proposing local and practical solutions and mechanisms to assist states parties to implement actions in support of sustainable development, adaptation to climate change, and enhancing resilience and disaster risk reduction, integrated with conservation of urban heritage, and where feasible, relevant, contribute towards promoting mitigation actions in World Heritage cities. In recent years, UNESCO has trained heritage experts around the world in digital documentation of at-risk or damaged sites, information of which will serve as a crucial foundation for the recovery of countries and communities impacted by conflict and disaster. As part of the Beirut initiative, funding from the Heritage Emergency Fund, a 3D geo-referenced urban and architectural survey in 3 areas of Beirut have been completed by ECONEM. And through this project, a specialized team at the DGA of Beirut has been built to document and monitor heritage buildings and urban spaces, making use of non-invasive technologies and drones. I will just share a short YouTube video on this. I hope that it plays. And I don't know if you can see it. Can you see this? Otherwise, I have to get out and share my screen again.
Not yet.
Not yet. I have to I'm just trying to see how I can
you have to share
get out and share my screen, but I'm not being able to see this. Sorry, just 1 second. It is not allowing me to share. Let me see if this will help. Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, it's okay now.
Okay. Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I just go back to my presentation. I had a few more things I wanted to share, and then I'll wrap up very quickly. There's one other, the project in Mosul that I wanted to share with you, because the project in Mosul is as part of UNESCO's initiative to revive the spirit of Mosul. We're also working with the French startup Econem on the use of drone technology and photogrammetry to understand the scale of the destruction in the old city of Mosul and to document damage to cultural heritage sites there. So I just wanted to share this, and let me see if I can get my sorry, I'm just trying to share the screen and it's not working. Okay, I'm just trying one more time. Sorry, I'm just getting back to my PowerPoint very quickly. Okay, so just very quickly now to wrap up, I wanted to mention the Europe. There is, I think I seem to have turned on something. I don't know if you're hearing music. I hope that this will end. The European Year of Cultural Heritage, we had a flagship project with a joint UNESCO-EU project that was initiated in the context of strengthening the connections between heritage and education in Europe, encouraging and stimulating young people to explore. Sorry, there is something on here. I need to get out of this. So this was bringing together tangible and intangible heritage. It was a joint project of the European Year of Cultural Heritage. It was in Zadar and included the forum that was organized, brought together 28 young professionals from the EU member states, and was hosted by the Croatian Commission for UNESCO and the Ministry of Culture in the Republic of Croatia. It provided hands-on experience with case studies of Venetian works of defense from the 16th and 17th century at the Stato de Terra, Western Stato de Mar. And the second case study was the art of dry stone walling knowledge and techniques. And there were project laboratories, interaction with local communities. So this had the impact of proposing an innovative learning methodology for the participants to work on their projects and build communication and advocacy campaigns based on emotion design approach. As a result, many of the participants were able to launch their pilot projects in their communities, successfully seeking funding for their projects and building partnership among themselves. So this ended up really being able to establish a very successful sustainable European heritage network for young professionals, a network of cultural heritage messengers across Europe. And a survey that was conducted was very positive a year after this project was completed, where 100% of the respondents assessed the contribution of the forum as helpful for their projects, and 100% responded as expressing that they would like to maintain and develop this network further. You know, there was an open webinar that was organized as a follow-up to this at the end of it. So coming to my very last slide, reviving, you know, some of the projects which are, as I mentioned, that are UNESCO EU projects in the field include, of course, the Spirit of Mosul, the World Heritage Journeys in the EU, the European Art Market against illicit trafficking of cultural property, training law enforcement officials on the fight against illicit trafficking, the Silk Road Heritage Corridors in Central Asia, protection of heritage in conflict in Iraq, Libya, Syria, Yemen, the Transcultura project in the Caribbean, and the Cash for Work in Yemen, and the support for livelihoods through cultural heritage in Jordan and in Iran, and also the Culture 2030 indicators, as I mentioned, the pilot implementation. So thank you very much. These are some of the things that we'd be very happy to bring, and we wait to hear from you on how you wish to proceed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jyoti. And of course, UNESCO is a very important stakeholder for 4CH now and for the Competence Center in the future. The UNESCO, as well as other important institutions, is already in the advisory board. But as Jyoti explained, the collaboration at different level between EU and UNESCO, it's a strong ongoing collaboration as well. So thank you again, Jyoti. Thank you very much. Now I give the floor to Erminia Shakitano. As I said, she's a coordinator of a branch, of a national branch of a supranational institution, of a worldwide institution. And it's very interesting to see how this is something that we will discuss in the third session This is the national level of the competence center. So at the national level of the competence center, there will be the national level collaboration between the worldwide and the international institution and their branches in each country, where there will be the coordination center of the competence center in each country. So please, Amelia, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the invitation. I'm also bringing the greetings of the president of ICOMOS Italy, Maurizio Di Stefano, who was very pleased for this invitation. And indeed, I have the responsibility of bridging the international and global dimension with the national dimension. So I've prepared a presentation and I will go as fast as I can because I understand that our time is running. And we had already interesting discussions. So please confirm that you see my presentation. Is it fine? Do you see the presentation on the screen?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
excellent. Excellent. A few words, because since you are you are now analyzing what are possible the user needs and the community of experts, which is grouped by ICOMOS. I think it's a very important and relevant community for your project. 50 years of experience. Funded in 1965, and it was funded following the adoption of the Venice Charter, so a very important reference document. It's a non-governmental and not-for-profit organization, international organization covering 151 countries. It is an advisory body of the World Heritage Committee for the implementation of the World Heritage Convention of UNESCO, 1972, together, of course, with the EUCN and ICROM. Its focus is it's committed to furthering the conservation, protection, use, and enhancement of the world cultural heritage. And what is interesting is that these community groups, let's say, hold the broad spectrum of cultural heritage professionals, architects, but including landscape architects, historians, archaeologists, art historians, geographers, anthropologists, engineers, town planners, jurists, and so on. It is also it is also committed to link the diverse, and it's very much committed to working in this complex governance. We will see in a few minutes, which is now reflected in the important and deep transformation the cultural heritage sector is facing. And it's also partner and founding member of the Blue Shields, which is the body which works to protect the world cultural heritage threatened by wars and natural disasters. This slide, it helps just so, since you were investigating how to group and assess knowledge, experience, and best practices. I think that ICOMOS can really bring all this experience and best practices, and I just want to stress, for instance, some tools and some instruments that maybe you can analyze, such as the publication, the documentation center that ICOMOS has, and the open access archive, and so on. So maybe some important information will be available using those tools. The presence of ICOMOS is global, so it covers 151 countries, and it groups more than 10,000 members, which work and are articulated. And here is the bridge between the global and the national dimension of ICOMOS in 104 national committees. But the work is also carried on through 29 international scientific committees. I prepared a slide also with the names of the committees, but not just, please don't think this is a dry presentation of what ICOMOS does, because I think that this is a very interesting taxonomy of the diversity of heritage, heritage professionals, heritage tasks, heritage spectrum. So I think it could be useful for you to have a look at the diverse committees, because again, in those committees, it is concentrated 50 years of experience in heritage protection, conservation, and management. And I also use this opportunity to think, to stress again, it was said, but it's always important to remind that, of course, yes, looking at the digitization or digitalization as a tool, yes, it is for sure a tool. But the power of digitization it's most exploited when it is seen as an enabling factor. An enabling factor that mankind now can use. So it means that even if it's not immediate, it's very easy to see, okay, 3D reproduction for conservation and preservation purposes, it's very easy to be seen. But I'm sure that in all aspects, in all dimensions of a heritage profession, this digital part, this digital component will be more and more evident in the future. This worldwide network of experts, which is articulated in international scientific committees, it is linked and it's connected to the national committees. And ICOMOS Italy also as a long story, the national committee, 50 years of experience. It was established in 1974. And as among the tasks, it's as a task to connect the international debate with the national debate, meaning that it brings to the international fora the reflection carried on in Italy and vice versa. Activities are promoted through a vast network of conservation professionals, institutions and organizations, specialized scientific committees, and international exchanges and collaborations with universities also to develop training modules and seminars. Here you can see on the right of the screen, you can see that in Italy, we have almost mirrored the same structure of the 28 national scientific committees, which are articulated around the 6 areas of knowledge, technology and diagnostic, materials, application and regional categories, territories and cultural tourism, and communication, evaluation, and management. But of course, a reflection is ongoing, as I said, because the sector is facing a deep transformation. And I'm just bringing now you a couple of ideas for our common brainstorming. This is the structure, the general structure of the scientific committees in Italy, which almost mirror the international scientific committees. And as you can see, in each of those committees, you can find one digital dimension. And of course, this means that the involvement of ICOMOS in the creation of a competence center and in the future discussion, I think will help to reach the discussion. Another important aspect is the well-established partnership, ongoing partnership. So ICOMOS doesn't work in isolation in the country and at international level. We just have seen the presentation of George Yosagra of UNESCO, which is the most important partner for cooperation. But there is a strong and important cooperation with other international organizations, of course, ICROM and IUCN, but also ICOM and so on. What is also important, and it's interesting in the previous slide, very quickly, is that actually ICOMOS is partnered. On the right, you see a very short logo, but it's partnered to the ongoing blueprint for skills for cultural heritage, which is working at European level to define the strategy, a new strategy for cultural heritage professionals. And I think that lots of the work that you are doing, it's also linked to the new competencies and skills that heritage professionals need in this, the transformation that the sector is facing. A couple of examples of, let's say, new questions and new issues. This is very much related to also to the eCorp, to the risk management aspects. When I work at the European Commission, I've been 6 years working in the European Commission and also involved in the European Year of Cultural Heritage. There is an important study that was carried on and coordinated by CNR in Bologna, which aim was to contribute to integrate cultural heritage into national disaster and risk reduction strategies developed by EU member states. I invite you to have a look at this study. Because this study provides the information available at EU and international level on really of the state of the art of information on risk management at EU international level. It has mapped the strategies and tools in the 28 EU member states. It has provided also some recommendations at European level. And among the important recommendations is the fact that the complex governance which is needed to act and to react in case of disasters or emergencies is actually very weak. There is a lack of coordination between and across the diverse level of governance. There is a lack of alignment in the responsibility change for policy making to application. Yes, cultural heritage has a low priority in risk management planning. But one of the important aspects is also that there is a lack of understanding and knowledge of the results of research by those who have to use the result of this research. And especially when these people have to use those results and those data and those information quickly, rapidly, in a case of an emergency. So an important aspect, I think, to be reflected by the Competence Center is the fact that, yes, data and information should be used by professionals, should be used by heritage professionals, but also by other actors which are involved in this complex governance, and especially in the situation of a possible disaster. Another important development was also mentioned by Jyoti Yosagrar, the huge work, the huge transformation that is ongoing in the understanding of the relation between of the role of a cultural heritage professional in relation to the climate crisis, the climate emergency. We can see, of course, UNESCO has done huge work in this direction. We also have an important milestone developed, produced by ICOMOS in 2019, which has produced a report called The Future of Our Past, analyzing cultural heritage in relation to the Paris Agreement. ICOMOS has created the Climate Heritage Network, really as a network of experts and organizations which is advocating the role of culture in climate action. As partnered with Europa Nostra, producing the European Cultural Heritage Green Paper, so looking at how cultural heritage can contribute to the objectives of the Green Deal. There has been a very important work done towards the COP26, where with the participation and a lot of debate and engagement of the culture and cultural heritage stakeholders in the climate summit. And recently, just a few days ago, a milestone. So the international co-sponsored meeting on cultural heritage climate change, co-sponsored by UNESCO, IPCC, and ICOMOS. This means that from the approach of risk management, so considering climate as a risk to be faced and to be addressed as something to be reacted. Now there is also a proactive approach to climate, in the sense that cultural heritage preservation, conservation can contribute to climate action, can contribute positively to reach the objectives of the Paris Agreement, can contribute to foster a diverse culture, a diverse behavior from citizens, to collect data and information that can be used, for instance, and also to contribute to the adaptation that is needed for the change that is now inevitable. I'm reflecting on this also because these are data and information that will be needed by heritage professionals in the forthcoming future, because their profession will probably change very soon. And finally, last slide to say, in the end, it's all about quality. What we do is that we want, of course, to produce and to deliver quality in what you do. Giorgio Sagras has also reminded the importance, how much culture is important for its transformative role. Now we don't look anymore only at quality as something which is delivered by expertise. Quality, it's also a process, but quality also means which benefit we produce on the territories through culture and cultural heritage policies in terms of regenerative development, which added value is brought to people and communities. And this added value is produced also and relies on cooperation and participation. So again, data and information in order to deliver, in order to produce quality, needs to be produced and accessed by diverse stakeholders beyond the cultural heritage sector. I close now. This is the just reminding that there is a very important publication. Maybe you can be also important for you to look, the European Quality Principles for EU-funded interventions on cultural heritage, where these concepts are expanded and now translated in many languages, EU languages. Also a production, a result of the European Year of Cultural Heritage. I stop for now, but again, the door is open to further cooperation and dialogue. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think that we
yeah. No, I'm saying no. Go on, Roberto.
Just to say thank you to Armenia for the presentation. And it was very interesting to see a very complex and detailed organization that I think it will be very interesting for us and working on the Competence Center to see how this kind of organization works and how they organize their breakdown in the departments and the line of action. Thank you very much again, Armenia. I think we are more or less in time, a little bit late. I give the floor again to Francesco for closing the session. Thank you.
But for Franco, it's okay. I think that we can proceed just to have an acceptable time. So, what do you think, Franco? Can you start the final session?
Well, if people is still able to continue,
to follow, yes.
No comments, and I think it's better to stick to the timetable. So, but I want to ask you 2 minutes only.
Okay.
The first minute is to take a photo of this very interesting meeting. So I would ask everybody, of course, if they have the camera, to switch their camera on, please. So please, if you don't have the camera, don't worry, we will make some editing to avoid that there are spaces, but please do that. Okay, 1 minute more. Paula, are you making the pictures?
Okay.
Okay. No, more people is coming. Okay. Oh, see. Okay. Everybody is still here. Okay. Thank you.
Just a moment. I didn't finish.
Okay. Do that.
1, 2.
Make more than one for everything. So we have also now Armenia added.
Let me go back to
my screen. Move to the other one, and then we will, collect these images.
Wait.
By the way, since they are taking the pictures, I would ask presenters who did not send us their presentations, please do so. Send them to Paula. You have their address because we ask everybody. So we will make them available on the website together with the registration of the meeting after some more editing.
I left my email address on the chat.
Yes, and also you will see how many people is following us on YouTube. Okay, so Paula, are you done with the photos?
Yes, thank you very much.
So thank you very much, and let's move to the third session. I don't want to make an introduction because time is running short. So I don't want to use for myself the time stolen to your coffee. Just an explanation of what this is about, as everybody has said before. The forthcoming structure of the Competence Center and its ramification in the different EU countries should not come from top, so as an imposition from the fourth chair progress, but we want to listen all the voices of the countries and of the various communities, and in one word, of all stakeholders. So we decided to start from here. Francesco before show the map. The map should have 4 yellow countries, and this time is not like the map we are.
Yes. But
this is not the map we are used to see, unfortunately, in these days. Because the yellow thing, the yellow color is a good thing in this case. There are those invited, but I'm sure that there are more, and we could not invite them to avoid to have a meeting ending at midnight. So we start from these countries. 2 are smaller, and perhaps for them it's easier to progress in the contribution of the situation of their country and in the perspective they have on a competence center. 2 others, well, one is very large, France, and the Netherlands is not so large, but it is very well advanced in the digitization, and not only in how many monuments they have digitized, but above all, how well is the storage of this information in their country. So this is the reason why we chose 4. We didn't add Italy. It would have been easy to speak about Italy. But after this short discussion, we thought that it would be a sort of vested interest, imposing our vision as coordinators to all stakeholders and to the other partners. So we started with these 4. They will present in alphabetical order by country. So the first one is Sorin Hermon from Cyprus. Sorin, you have the floor.
Thank you, Franco. I will share my screen. Okay, so. Okay. So I hope you can see it clearly and you can hear me clearly. A few words about the institute where I work and which represents Cyprus in 4CH. The Cyprus Institute is a private non-profit institution. Recently, it opened the CREFER as an accelerator hub for the commercialization of research. Our primary activities in research and providing Master of Science and PhD diplomas. But it also has a very active unit for innovation and entrepreneurship. It functions as an aggregator for Europeana since 2009. We were one of the first, if not the first, institute to provide data from Cyprus to Europeana. And we have signed memorandum of understandings and collaborations with all the public institutions that deal with cultural heritage in Cyprus, as well as law enforcement units, particularly those related to illicit trafficking. The Institute has the largest HPC infrastructure for research purposes in the southeastern Mediterranean for primarily large-scale data simulation and storage. We have a very active lab where we work very intensively in integrating data from digital cultural heritage and the heritage science as well. And we are the only lab with such an activity in Cyprus. You know, you heard quite a lot probably about the climate initiative, and we have a team that works on climate change and heritage at risk. And the Institute is part of the Sustainable Development Solutions Network. So when we start talking about the CC and what and how can we explain its mission, from our point of view, the European Center should have a kind of legislative authority where it would coordinate activities across national CCs, exchange good practices, liaise with various other institutions at European level, such as the Disaster Risk Management Knowledge Center, the European Forum for Disaster Risk Reduction, and so forth. We have seen here the liaison with the other international bodies. It should manage the European knowledge base, in our opinion, and monitor funding initiatives and coordinate efforts in developing the CC, as well as suggesting pan-European academic and research program developments. Currently, there are very few actually academic programs dedicated to this domain, so that would be also a good idea to develop them. It should gather information from national CCs on issues of European relevance and develop strategic partnerships, as we have seen here, and they put down some of these. So in sum, the European CC should provide update, opportunities, data, and legislation. Whereas we would see the national CCs as an executive authority where we identify all the potentially interested institutions, we define and identify the priorities in Cyprus, connect between the various stakeholders, private and public sector. So connectivity and cooperation are keywords, and I'm glad to hear that it was stressed very clearly in previous presentations. We should provide training, various types of training. And again, the digital upskilling was mentioned earlier. Raise awareness about the activities of the CC and coordinate the national efforts in implementing such recommendations. We would like to establish a national observatory for risks management, particularly also because our institute is very active in the climate change initiative. We have a very ambitious EU-funded project for 30 million euros to create a center dedicated to that. So we are in the right position to deal with this subject at regional level, of course. Then map risks at national level and suggest mitigation strategies and suggest mechanisms for the sustainability of the CC at national level. Contribute from our expertise in developing the distributed service platform and create and maintain a local knowledge base. So as such, it provides data, best practices, suggestions, and reports to the European CC. Moving on to the next question that we were asked to address, namely who are the main actors in the cultural heritage domain which should be involved in the CC design and activities. So for the design in Cyprus, the public sector that is relevant is the Ministry of Transportation and Public Works, primarily the Department of Antiquities. Then we have the Department of Town Planning and Housing in the Ministry of Interior, and they are responsible for buildings, monuments that are in the various municipalities. Then the Department of Forestry, which is under the Ministry of Agriculture, because they have the first responding units in cases of disasters in forested areas, so all the mountain region of Cyprus, but not only. Then the police, and particularly the unit for illicit trafficking and border control police, the Church of Cyprus, who is the owner of many ecclesiastic heritage building, and finally the Directorate General for European Programs, Coordination and Development. From the private sector, there are quite a few creative industries. I don't know, by the way, if you know this very, very big company called Wargaming. It's one of the largest worldwide, and their base is in Cyprus, by the way. Then law firms dealing with the cultural and heritage property rights, and accountant companies dealing with public funding regulations. Then, okay, in the design, we have the academy, and we are a good representative, but we have also others, such as the Frederick University, the Cyprus University, University of Technology in Limassol, and so forth. Then, in terms of activities, we would like to involve, of course, the public sector mentioned above. And as beneficiaries, I put down here a few of them. Of course, the beneficiaries are all the above: the tourism board, the Cyprus Tourism Organization, various developers, for example, industries and professional bodies, for example, surveyors and so forth. And of course, the creative industries, including the gaming industry. Now, in terms of most urgent needs of cultural heritage in Cyprus, in our opinion, the needs of the Cyprus cultural heritage to be prioritized are an exhaustive inventory list of monuments and sites. Of course, this is something that continuously updates as long as archaeological excavations are ongoing, but even at the monuments level and sites level that exist, they should be properly put down in a list, and this is a high priority. Then Cyprus has several World Heritage sites, UNESCO World Heritage sites, and their management plans should be implemented. Most of them are, but some are still in the process of implementing them. Then try to characterize the current state of preservation of these monuments and sites and identify specific risks, because Cyprus is quite diverse in its environment, from the coast, which has monuments that are at other risk, that, for example, those high in the mountains, or those who are within museums or heritage monuments. Then set up predictive models on such risk impacts, and particularly related to the climate change models, and we are working on that as well. And finally, have the extensive digitization, and this is something that needs to be discussed, how and what exactly to digitize. And these are operational needs. Now, in terms of structural needs, we need new business models for management and valorization of cultural heritage, distributed, collaborative, cross-sectorial laboratory infrastructure, the establishment of an emergency intervention unit, which would address primarily the needs of cultural heritage monuments and sites, integrate the immaterial, the intangible aspect of cultural heritage into its management. And this is, I think, quite a new field that needs to be addressed, and for sure 4CH will deal with that. And collaboration and engagement strategies among stakeholders. And on the right-hand side, I have put the CC scope and activities as mentioned in the project document of work. So there is no need to go over them again, because I'm sure everyone here knows them quite well. In terms of support that we would expect from a European CC and the national CC, At the European level, we would expect to have updates on new technologies, new methodologies, and best practices, have advice on policies and EU funding programs, data management plans, and have coordination at European level at large-scale research, training trainers, and suggest academic curricula. In terms of national CCs, the services that we would like to have is to evaluate projects that are ongoing in this domain, conduct field operations, laboratory analysis, recommend policies to the public institutions, and have a proper sustainable data management infrastructure. For training, we would look into upskilling towards the digital transformation, cross-sectorial cooperation. So we need to work really hard on establishing such an environment. Also community engagement. There are various communities in Cyprus it's very, very important to link between them and cultural heritage, and then have an assessment on how we can best benefit from our cultural heritage resources and exploit them properly. Now, what kind of institution it should be, I put down here something very preliminary, and it's just an idea for this presentation. But no, I mean, being in Cyprus, this institute for quite a while, we would suggest to have the CC as an independent body able to operate across ministries with a legal status of its own and clearly defined roles, operational capacities, and financial stability. It should have advisory and management boards from relevant public and private bodies, and the scientific and innovation expertise from a host institution and related group of experts. Finally, if we are thinking in terms of obstacles, at European level, an obstacle that we may think about, but actually seeing the commitment of the European Commission, it's a kind of low, let's say, but I wanted to mention it here that if we don't have support from the European Commission in terms of accreditation and financial support, that would be a challenge. Then, in terms of sustainability, we need to be sure, or as much as possible, of course, that the European Commission will have a coherent and long-term vision of interest, and I've seen here again that this is the case, so that's very, very good and promising. And if there is a lack of help in the organizing structure, then it would be a problem. Then at national level, the obstacles that we could identify were a lack of cooperation by other institutions and by public bodies, but primarily public bodies, maybe because they lack human resources or the proper structure to provide such a cooperation. Actually, as I mentioned earlier, we have MOU signed with these institutions, and behind these MOUs are proper projects that are ongoing. So I don't see it such a big obstacle at all. Then, of course, sustainability in terms of financial support, and what is very important is to have a kind of formal recognition of that. And how to address these possible obstacles is through lobbying at European Commission, through national contact points, and advise on support and sustainability mechanisms, and provide, and we have to think about these kind of incentives for participations and how to engage national policymakers and suggest the financial and social benefits. Finally, if we talk about the data space, and here we have some ideas on recommendations from the European Commission towards national policymakers. That's very important. endorsements of the CC's activities by the European Commission. EU as a marketplace of services for the CC, and we have to think of these incentives for the collaboration, and possible conditional funding, and revenues for sharing and reusing data, and possibly seeing the CCs as national curators of the data space. So thank you very much. I will stop sharing the screen now.
Okay, Sonny, thank you very much. Before moving to the next speaker, two clarifications. You have seen some questions written in red on top of Sonny's slides. These were the sort of instructions I sent to presenters to guide the discussion, so that we might have some better comparable results. And secondly, as regards the European Commission, maybe sorry for the sake of confusion, did not explain this completely. I think that he has the same vision as we have. It means that we must lobby through our governments to the Commission, not to the, I would like to say, colleagues working in the unit and in DG Connect, but because to make pressure in favor of these initiatives. And I have in mind, for example, the last Council on Culture in Portugal, where there was strong support for this kind of initiative, which helps us to progress in the work, and perhaps also is an approval of the actions of the unit following us as a project. So now we move to France. Beatrice, you should open the PowerPoint, Beatrice, because we see the presenter's view. So, oh, that's perfect. Thank you very much. Beatrice, you have the word as our French partners representative.
Thank you. So, a brief presentation. I'm a teacher and researcher in computer science, but I work with Xavier Rodier, who is the head of MSH Val de Loire and Humanum Massa Consortium. And this is why I participate in 4CH and cultural heritage and stuff. I'm going to give you a quick overview of actors, competences, and expectations from France with respect to a national relay of the Competence Center for CH. So I will not address all the 6 questions by Franco because
don't worry, it's okay.
Okay, because presenting the main actors and competences in France takes time. I will address the relationship between 4CH and the national relay, the expected specific technological coordination actions, and the main actors and competences. And I will focus on some structures that support collaborations in France. I mean, Humanum and the Fondation des Sciences du Patrimoine, FSP, with concrete examples of collaboration spaces that are the MASA and 3D for Humanities consortia, and also the Espadon program, which are all contributing to the success of the Notre-Dame de Paris restoration. And I must warmly thank all the contributors to this presentation, because I'm a computer scientist, and without all of them, I would not be able to present these topics. So Sylvie Leclerc, Marie-Véronique Leroy, and Pascal Liévaux from the French Ministry of Culture, Vincent Detal, the scientific coordinator of Espadon, Olivier Baud, Adeline Joffre, and Nicolas Larousse from Humanum, Xavier Granier and Florent Laroche from 3D for Humanities Consortium, and Livio De Luca, the coordinator of the Digital Data Group for the restoration of Notre-Dame de Paris. So concerning the relationship between 4CH and relay at national level, the discussion comes with these ideas. This relay is seen as a coordination point. It does not necessarily require the creation of a new structure in France, but it would need to have a relative independence because of the complex landscape of cultural heritage. If the European 4CH achieve a pivotal role between actors from different countries, then the national relay would be a gateway towards local stakeholders for education, training, integration in European networks. And in return, it would be able to report to the European level the interesting national achievements. Regarding specific coordination actions, because digitization campaigns for cultural heritage assets are already well advanced in France, this question of preserving those digitalized artifacts arises. So this could be done by building a cartography of stakeholders, competencies, data sets, tools, projects, initiatives, etc. This could also be by coordinating working groups, maybe in conjunction with the Research Data Alliance. These groups may be about managing digital cultural heritage data, or the groups, networks may be established for having experts, and we may also make links between the institutions from different countries and so forth. Regarding now the main actors and competencies in cultural heritage in France, we have on the one hand the actors who have Hegelian competencies, public actors who also have important management and funding competencies, and non-governmental actors who manage also cultural heritage and use and produce cultural heritage data. And on the other hand, we have actors of the research sector, and notably those who have competencies for supporting collaborations that I already mentioned previously, and who contribute to the Notre-Dame restoration currently. First, the French Ministry of Culture carries out all Hegelian competencies, which are listed here, from legal protection to setting of standards, financing, supervising the management of most structures in the cultural sector. And there are also other actors at more local levels that exercise management and funding competencies, the regions, the departments, and the cities. For instance, their contributions to inventories are very important, and they exercise all these other competencies that are listed here. Last, we have the other actors, non-governmental, and they manage built heritage. They can also finance this management and produce data, knowledge, or services for cultural heritage. And then come the research sector with many research laboratories, some being under the authority of the Ministry of Culture, while the majority are under the authority of the Ministry of Higher Education, Research and Innovation. As you know, in France, research laboratories are in universities, but also in research institutes, such as CNRS, CAA, and so on. And in this landscape, very important structures exist that provide support for collaboration. We think that these structures may also be seen as some kinds of competence centers for scholars. And so I will present these actors. And firstly, supported by the Ministry of Culture, the Fondation des Sciences du Patrimoine, FSP, has brought together a large number of French cultural institutions and research laboratories dedicated to the conservation and the restoration of material heritage. And since the beginning of this year, 2021, the FSP is the funding body of Espadon, a large research program whose aims are to conceptualize, develop, and implement augmented heritage objects. Importantly, to reach these objectives, Espadon is planning to rely on 3 networks, network for a reflexive approach to the augmented heritage object with social sciences and humanities, another network of experts of physical, chemical, and 2D and 3D multiscale analysis, bringing knowledge on instrumental developments and data processing to be included in the augmented heritage objects, and a network of data scientists. Espadon exists and interacts in a wide ecosystem depicted here, and you can see that within this ecosystem, there is the other structure for collaboration that I wish to talk about now. I mean Humanum. So Humanum is supported by the CNRS. It's a French very large research infrastructure with an international reach, and it is devoted to social science and humanities. Its aim is to support research communities by providing services, assessment, and tools on digital research data. It bases its activities on an innovative form of organization that involves humans in what they call Humanum consortia, which are groups of researchers and engineers funded by Humanum and working on common areas of interest. Humanum also develops and offers technological resources, and all these resources are built to foster the famous FAIR principles. Regarding its 8 national consortia, the main idea is to organize multidisciplinary collective dialogue within research communities by bringing together different types of actors, the researchers, technical staff, librarians, engineers, and so on. These actors come from different institutions, and the aim is to create synergies. In return, a consortium is expected to provide guidelines of technological and scientific best practices, and also new standards, new tools, etc. Humanum is also developing several links with regional infrastructures called Maison des Sciences de l'Homme, MSH. This network brings together CNRS and university laboratories to work with each other. And lastly, Humanum is also involved in several European and international projects. Now, I quickly present 3D for Humanities, a Humanum consortium whose aim is to embrace all uses of 3D technologies and data. So it's strongly related to 4CH. So its members performed a great job on clarifying the vocabularies associated to 3D. And they also published guidelines on methodologies, standard metadata formats, and so on. And they also devised a national repository for 3D datasets, which is managed by Humanum. MASA is another Humanum consortium dedicated to archaeology and which disseminates the FAIR principles in the French archaeology community. And these two consortia who participates in the work site of Notre-Dame de Paris. So the last focus we think important to do is this ongoing national scientific site of Notre-Dame de Paris, coordinated by CNRS and the Ministry of Culture. It brings together many researchers, many research units, and they collaborate in order to devise ways of working together on the same object with different points of view and different expertises. As the generated data is multi-dimensional, framework is being built currently by a federating effort in order to allow each one to benefit from methodologies and tools built by the others. And this framework is called NDAM, for N-dimensional analysis and memorization ecosystem. You can see here some of its tools, and on the right, there are several of the involved research laboratories. And one important thing to notice is that many of these laboratories were already used to work together within the 3D for Humanities and MASA consortia, and also within the Fondation des Sciences du Patrimoine. So to summarize, the Notre-Dame de Paris is a live demonstration of the ability of the French cultural ecosystem to build collaborations quickly and effectively in order to achieve a common goal. So the French relay of 4CH may take place via this networking of existing skills in cultural heritage management and also cultural heritage research structures. So in conclusion, the added value of France for 4CH could be this maturity in the management, processing, sharing, and archiving also of cultural heritage data. I finished. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Beatrice, for your very extensive and interesting presentation, which is on the one hand very important for, as it clarifies and gives a good overview of what can be the French contribution. And if I may, it's also encouraging for the 4CH project, because with such colleagues, what can stop us? So I think that the contribution it can bring in different domains including, of course, 3D visualization, will be very useful for the full project and for the forthcoming competence center. But now let's move to the Netherlands. Hella, are you there? Are you ready? If you are ready, please go. The floor is yours. Hella, maybe you should...
Yes, I found the unmute button. It moved upstairs instead of below. So let's start. So I will give you a presentation from the perspective of the Netherlands. And first I will start with an introduction about DANS, the archive I'm working on, repository. And I will give you a view about how the infrastructure is organized, speak about the Dutch Cultural Heritage Agency, and well, the developments we are facing right now, and the expectations for this national CC. And it was already nice to hear the discussions and reading the chats, important points were already addressed. So let me see. Next slides. Even kijken. There, yeah. So I work in this office in DANS, and DANS is the National Expertise Center and Repository for Research Data. It's part of the KNAW, and which is the Royal Academy for Arts and Sciences, and the Dutch Research Council. And the mission is to promote and provide permanent access to digital research resources. It is a trusted repository, meaning it has a certificate, the Quartz seal. We know a lot about how to make data available for the long term in a trustworthy way. And we have a long history with certification and how to get certified. And we also do training on this and give advice as we are having this expertise. The other important expertise we have at DANS is how to make this data fair. So it's not only about a trusted repository, but it should also offer fair data. We help to set up these guidelines, which Beatrice also showed. It's very nice to see that there are many translations already existing. You can find them when you Google them in Zenodo or via the Partners websites. And it's also still a need or a demand from many partners. So there's still work to do to promote this fair data. So DANS is a repository for data like archaeology. And how is this organized in the Netherlands? So you have the Dutch Cultural Heritage Agency, the RCA. It's based in Amersfoort, you can see on the left. And all kinds of partners below it are connected to this structure. So they have a key function in the Netherlands. For example, the provincial depots and museums, they are all related to this. I focus in now to give you an example, for example, for archaeology, how is this organized? So you have our archive in the middle, and we deal with excavators, but also international projects like Ariadne, the governmental depots from the provinces or municipalities, individual researchers, universities. So it's an ecosystem in itself. And because the Netherlands is relatively small, we can communicate very easily with all those partners, which is probably one of the key factors to success, this collaboration. So when I was asked to present this presentation, I was thinking, okay, what is important to share on top of what was already discussed and presented? So I thought to give you a short overview about current developments. So the focus of next year is on the development of Dutch digital competence centers, because the aim of the government of the Netherlands is to create this infrastructure based on thematic digital competence centers. There are three main branches in this. The life sciences and health, the natural and engineering sciences, and the social sciences and humanities. And this last one is led by DANS to create this thematic DCC. It's funded by the Dutch Research Council with a lot of money, you can see yearly. And so the idea is to develop roadmaps and including the plans of investments supporting this network. And it will start with a set of projects, but it also will have a spin-off with projects. And this roadmap is also about consulting the fields about the needs, and domain experts will give feedback. So there's an analysis of the landscape, and challenges will be identified. And what's also important to know, we have like the Heritage Act, which covers museum objects, museums, monuments, and archaeology. And these formal standards and acts, they improve this national collaboration. And I think this is also developing in like guidelines on domains and protocols for how to carry out certain research or jobs. So DANS, where I work as the head of the data station archaeology, is introducing domain-specific data stations. So we are active in the cultural heritage part, but also in the social sciences and humanities, and the more technical and life science disciplines. And of course, we store this data for the long term, because that's our objective, to not only do this for the short term, but certainly for the long term. So let's continue. So the expectations of this national CC, and this is only, well, the first thoughts you can say, and open for discussion, is that there are indeed many parties involved, but in the Netherlands, it's organized for the Ministry of Culture and Science and this Dutch Cultural Heritage Agency, which I showed you in the beginning of my presentation. DANS is leading and facilitating, like I showed also in the previous slides, for the humanities and social sciences. And we have a direct connection with the universities. Then you have the museum sector, of course, the governmental institutions, private organizations. Well, probably more, like Harry also wrote in the chat, the NDA, you have stakeholders, and you can identify them, and that they should be identified. I think the Cultural Heritage Agency, the RCA, has the experience. They are, for example, being active in ERISE, which is setting up a national Dutch hub for the European research infrastructure for heritage science. And I think they should be involved as main partner. And then I think all those circles around it should be connected to it. The competence center should be visible and easy to approach. So it should not be something at the back of many layered structures. So it should be easy to approach for different national stakeholders. It shouldn't be bureaucratic, and it should connect people from different groups and point to existing and new knowledge in the country. And this is the point I made also in the chat. It's on the one hand you have the protocols and the main infrastructure, but the challenge is, of course, to connect with local museums or people who are not yet that advanced in their infrastructure or in their, but they have, of course, a certain knowledge or expertise in their field, and that would be really good to address and to also to discuss in a broader context. with Europeana, for instance. There should be an active communication network to make this collaboration happen. And for now, the Cultural Heritage Agency is part of the advisory board of 4CH, and by Uta Potkiezer, professor at Delft. And so we are already in the right direction. So this is my short overview of the Dutch current situation, and I hope that it was clarifying in this perspective. Thank you for listening.
Okay, thank you very much, Hella, for your overview of the Dutch situation, which is, I think it's already well advanced, and you can provide very important contributions to the design also of the European Competence Center. So I now give the floor to João Mimoso for the report from Portugal, and he's the last speaker. Thank you for being so patient and wait for your turn, João.
Okay, being the last has some little advantage. Let me see what is here. And here. Okay, so hello everybody. My name is João Manuel Mimoso, and I work with a laboratory in Lisbon, which is National Laboratory for Civil Engineering. We are a laboratory of engineers. I'm a mechanical engineer, and I head the group that works with cultural heritage. Being an engineering lab, we have been working with digital models for many decades. Some were even developed here, but our models are slightly different from those that you are used to. For instance, that's the you see, we do a model that looks like the monument, but it has also like a beam. It has in itself the characteristics of the materials, so that we can simulate with it, for instance, an earthquake, and see what will happen. And this is another model for a dam, a large dam in Portugal. And this is another model for the skeleton, for the structure of a monastery in Lisbon. Well, being a mechanical engineer, I'm very pragmatic. I have my feet on the ground. I am an optimist, but I like to start with simple things. So I'm going to talk about a system we have in mind, which is simple, because I think the simpler, the easier may be to bring it to fruition. So there are around 3,000 monuments in Portugal, of which about 4,500 are classified in one of three categories. And there are over 800 monuments in the top category. A synopsis of main Portuguese stakeholders in the case of cultural heritage monuments are the state, which is represented at any time by the government, the local authorities, other owners, managers of cultural heritage, such as the church and private foundations, but the church actually doesn't have, you can see lots of churches and monasteries in Portugal, but they don't belong to the church. Those that are monuments were, all assets of the church were nationalized in 1834 and in 1911. Then in 1940, a number were given back to the church, but only those that were not monuments. those that are monuments can be used by the church but are not owned by the church. So the church is not it is a very important stakeholder, but it's not the manager of monuments. Then we have the suppliers of services such as consultants, conservation restorers, etc., universities, media, interest groups, the public, etc., etc. And there is one special stakeholder which I did not include here, but I'll come back to him at the end. So if we see these from the side of, if you want, the demand and the supply, so those represented in blue are the demand, those in red are the possible supply, and those in green are neither demand nor supply. But they are very, very, very important, as we will see also. Starting with the state. So the state is in Portugal the major owner of classified monuments. Public monuments are managed by the General Directorate for Cultural Heritage, which depends from the Ministry of Culture. And this has some problems with it. One of them is the rotation of the ministries and the general directors. For instance, in the last May, I had a meeting with the General Director for Cultural Heritage. I had a meeting about this project for CH. We went very well. We went along very well. Also, he was a mechanical engineer as me, but some 2 weeks later, he was dismissed by the minister. And the new one has not been appointed yet. So the government has fallen. We are going to have a general election next January, and this rotation of those that determine the policies is very worrying, because we can do a deal with someone, and then next month or next year we'll have a different person. Another problem is that is the lack of funds. As did our colleague Herminia from DICOMOS, cultural heritage is very often not in the first line of where the budget is going to be applied. So when we have a crisis, and Portugal has been in a crisis, in a financial crisis for the last couple of centuries, when we have a crisis, one of the subjects from which the budget is immediately decreased is cultural heritage. So it's not often a priority. Also, there is also some distance from the public. It's very comfortable to decide in your office. You don't have to say anything. And what I feel is that they are applying money here and there, and they do not care to explain well why there and not elsewhere. Now, local authorities are elected and work face-to-face with the electors. This is very important because the government doesn't work face-to-face with us. But if you are in a small town or even a larger one, the local authorities work face-to-face with them. They walk the streets, they take coffee or go to the restaurants with other people, and so they are very much engaged in their town or their region. So they aim at improving and promoting their towns and increase cultural tourism based on whatever assets the region may offer. And sometimes they are not aware of what they may offer, but they are very open to be helped there. So I think that in those local authorities will be a very interesting market. In some regions, townships are aggregating in powerful associations for a global representation of the regional interests. And they're also very interesting because it's not only one town, it's a group, a large group sometimes of towns and villages with lots of interesting monuments. So they also are a very interesting stakeholder with whom we can talk. So in conclusion, local and regional authorities may be strong supporters of a Portuguese competence center with a view to economic benefits. CC may help integrate projects because since they sometimes represent several towns, we can help them integrate the projects between the towns and even between the regions. But if we are to expect interest and help, we have to offer always some value. So we have to have an eye on what they are interested in, and we have to tell him we can serve the interest of your town, of your region, in this manner. As for the suppliers of services, they include organizations such mine, which can work as consultants, companies are acting in the field, etc., etc. All will be interested in business opportunities, but private conservators are dual in that they will also be interested in education and training opportunities. As for the public, media and interest groups, very often we don't think about them, but in fact, Portugal is strongly connected to its history. And sometimes when the population says no, it is no. Some years ago, they wanted to build 2 towers behind, not too near, but they would alter the skyline behind the Portuguese Belém Yeronimite monastery, and people said no, and it was no. They were building a dam that would drown a number of prehistorical interesting remains, and people said no, and it was no. So they are generally interested in storytelling related to monuments, and they strongly support their conservation and actively react against the loss of important values. We may expect firm support here if the right message is passed. Because one time will come when we have to decide whether we have to support our competence center on the basis of bottom-up policy or on the basis of top-down policy. We could start by the top, by the state, and then go down. And this to me is a very difficult approach, or we can start from the bottom up, start with the public, interest the public, the local authorities, and then try to reach the state. So many questions, few answers. Question: what does the Portuguese cultural heritage expect from a competence center for the conservation of monuments? And this was one of the main question that was put to me. And my answer is nothing. They don't expect nothing from us at this point. We are a blackboard. So it depends on what we are going to write on that board. This is comfortable to us, but also gives us a great responsibility. So what should be done? Well, we have to write on that board, and we have to choose to whom we want to appeal, how we should start. And this is one of the subjects that is to be addressed under 4CH. Question: is a competence center for the conservation of monuments of utility in Portugal? And what may its activity be? Well, of course, it may be of utility in Portugal. Of course, that goes without it's obvious. And what may its activity be? Well, possible activities at the local level are to give independent support to authorities, but the question is whether they want our support. You see, we cannot go there and say, well, we are here to help you. So sometimes we have to go bottom up and expect that the population sees the support, and then through them, the authorities also see the need for our support. We can prepare or translate guidance documents on conservation and management of heritage, etc., etc., etc. We can support the bringing to value of monuments, such as with digital twins, digital restitution, storytelling, conservation, promotion. And this will be very well accepted, I think, at the local level, in which we can go face to face with the local authorities and say, look, we have this idea, you have this monument here, we can improve its value, so we propose this and this and this. Are you interested? We can look out for funding opportunities towards the restoration, upkeeping, making sustainable, visitable, etc., the monuments. And we can promote education, training, and diffusion diffusion actions. You may say that this is very few items, but still, I like simple things, as I told you, and I think we should choose only 1, 2, or 3 items to start with. Those that we think would have a greater impact, that would give us the opportunity to write more on that blackboard. So, question: is a local competence center for the conservation of monuments financially sustainable in Portugal? I have seen that my colleagues have talked about funding, about having funding. Well, I'm not counting on that, because if I'm counting on funding, then I can start until I have funding. Is it financially sustainable? Yes, but for starters, we should start in a manner that calls for no funding at all. That's the only manner in which we are certain we can start almost now. Not really now, because we need more work done under the project, but we can start soon. And for that, we should have no fixed costs at the beginning. We can have an agreement, a consortium between the partners. We can start activity. Whatever activity we do has to be financially viable, but I would not count with financial support at the start. What I said until now is trivial and probably did not interest you very much. But that was also because I consider only an isolated entity, a national competence center in Portugal. But that would be a worst case scenario. It's something I can organize now. What if the Portuguese is part of a network? Well, then the possibilities, of course, are unfolded. We can aim at proposing and gaining international funding through projects. We can resource the best specialists in Europe in each field. We can share best practices and materials with all countries. We can use the best that may be Italian. Maybe our Spanish friends can use the best on some field, and that was developed here in Portugal, etc., etc., etc. And I pointed that a stakeholder was missing. That stakeholder should be common to all countries, and of course it is the European Commission. Monuments are related with several of the aims of the Union, as our colleague from UNESCO also pointed, and therefore support of the European Commission is not difficult to justify. If the European Competence Center is strongly supported by the Commission, and if that interest and support is also steadily reflected in the Portuguese Competence Center, that will be a first pillar for success, a very important one. Networking will be the second. And the local perception of usefulness, that depends on what we write and on that blackboard, will be the third pillar. And thank you very much. I hope some.
Can you start? Can you stop sharing? Okay, thank you very much. So I have 10 minutes for conclusion. I will use 1 because we have been exposed to 4 different perspectives. The work which expects us in the next months is having more of these contributions and reducing them to 1 perspective for the European Competence Center and find the viable solutions for the national ones. So there is no final conclusion, there are only initial conclusions on my side. Also because I want to something that can go in the Guinness Book of Records, a workshop which ends 4 minutes in advance to the president at the end of the meeting. So thank you very much. That's all on my side. Francesco, if you want to...
No, I want to thank everybody. And as you can see, we had a lot of discussion points in the chat, points that will be better developed in the future. So I want to thank all the participants again for their contributions, presentation, and so on. And it's important, as you were saying, Franco, that it's right to have the panorama from all the countries, obviously, even those in which there may be more difficulties. So I can say to you, nice holiday. I hope to see you soon and hope to see you in presence. So now the floor for the last bye-bye to Roberto, and thanks to the Commission and to everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. And also from my side, thank you all the participants and the speakers. Thank you so much.
So bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Ciao. Bye.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye to everybody.
Bye.